weekend only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, this is GB News, Britain's news channel. In the last few moments, Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Kent. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker looks back on a life of royal service.
Breaking down royal barriers ahead of her time, Catherine, Duchess of Kent, was the music-loving royal who captivated Wimbledon crowds as the tournament's trophy presenter. She made history, converting to Catholicism, defying centuries-old tradition, and quietly taught piano to underprivileged schoolchildren. Her childhood was unusual for a royal. Born in Yorkshire in 1933 with ancestral ties to Oliver Cromwell, who was responsible for overthrowing King Charles I, she received no formal education until she was 10. She fell in love with music and, after school, worked in a children's home and as a nursery teacher. Her life changed dramatically when she met Prince Edward, the late Queen's cousin.
A dress to take the breath away, and a smile that has already won the world's affection.
They married in 1961 in a grand ceremony at York Minster, the first royal wedding there in over 600 years. The Duke and Duchess of Kent had 3 children together. She also tragically suffered a miscarriage after contracting rubella. Then, in 1977, her son, Patrick, was stillborn. She plunged into a deep depression and later spoke openly about her experiences, one of the first members of the royal family to break royal taboos and raise public awareness. But it was Wimbledon where she showed moments of genuine humanity. In 1993, she comforted a tearful Jana Novotná after the Czech tennis player lost the women's final. The Duchess whispered, "Don't worry, you'll win one day." And she did, 5 years later on Centre Court. Catherine became the first senior member of the royal family to publicly convert to Catholicism since the Act of Settlement, which bars Catholics from the line of succession. She converted with Queen Elizabeth's permission, who saw it as a personal matter of faith. Music wasn't just a passion, it inspired her charity work. A talented pianist, organist, and violinist, she founded Future Talent in 2004, a charity providing music scholarships and opportunities to talented children from disadvantaged backgrounds. In that spirit, she spent 13 years as simply Mrs. Kent, teaching music at a deprived Hull primary school. She maintained her royal anonymity. She held several patronages, advocating for inclusive arts education, and in 2016 hosted a concert at Buckingham Palace for young people. Before stepping back from full-time royal duties in 2002, she represented Queen Elizabeth across the world. But chronic fatigue syndrome meant public appearances in later life were rare. She attended the wedding of the future Prince and Princess of Wales in 2011 and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's in 2018. But she skipped Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee celebrations and her funeral in 2022, as well as King Charles's coronation the following year. Her final public appearance was last October at Kensington Palace to watch the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards honour the Duke of Kent's 89th birthday. At 92, Her Royal Highness was the oldest living member of the royal family, but a Yorkshire lass at heart. The Duchess leaves behind a loving husband, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. A stoic royal who chose passion over protocol.
That's Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Kent, who lost just now at 92 years old. Now, we have some breaking news for you. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has left government and quit her position as Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government after admitting she did not pay enough tax on her flat in Hove. Let's cross live now to our political editor, Christopher Hope.
That's right, we can confirm that Angela Rayner has resigned. We can confirm Angela Rayner has resigned from the government. This comes moments after the Prime Minister received this report from Sir Laurie Magnus. He's the independent advisor on ethics. Sir Laurie Magnus has a reputation for being a very quick reviewer of information. He took 8 days to look into Tulip Siddique's affairs, 6 days into those of Nadine Zahawi back in 2023. But Angela Rayner has left the government after admitting that she didn't pay the right amount of tax on an £800,000 flat she bought in Hove. She's been the Deputy Prime Minister since the start of this government in July 2024, a deputy leader elected by members since 2020, a Stockport-born, competent, educated politician. She left school at 16, pregnant with no qualifications, trained as a care worker, a unionist official, and came into politics as an MP in 2015. An extraordinary story of success, of pulling herself up from a very humble beginning to being the deputy leader of this country. But now she is out because of admitting that she paid the wrong amount of stamp duty on the flat she bought in Hove. A real moment for this government. There are now 4 vacancies on the front benches. We are expecting at some point soon quite a big reshuffle to try and bring back this government back in some order and have ministers filling the jobs that they are meant to be doing for this government. But I can confirm that Angela Rayner has resigned from this government.
Christopher, do we know whether how willing she was to resign? Can you give us any more details on that?
We don't. Things are moving very, very rapidly, Miriam, here in Downing Street. We do know that that the PM received the report from Sir Laurie Magnus only this morning, which means he would have acted within hours of reading it. We don't know the length of it. We know, of course, that her friends on the Labour front bench were defending her. We heard from Peter Kyle, who said that she's been treated very differently due to her accent and background, suggesting that the criticism of Angela Rayner is linked to class or her working class background or how she speaks as a northerner. Now it seems that's been disregarded completely by the Prime Minister, and we don't know whether she was sacked or whether she resigned. We'll be hearing shortly, almost certainly, statements to make that clear.
And do we know what's going to happen now? Will she just go back to the back benches? I mean, what is her future looking like?
It's quite confusing because, of course, she will have left her role as Deputy Prime Minister and Housing and Local Government Secretary, but she's also elected the Deputy Leader. She's held that job since Keir Starmer became leader back in 2020. Now, it's going to be quite a strange and unusual situation to have an elected Deputy Leader not in the government on the back benches, and frankly, we are in uncharted territory here. Will she resign from that role, and might there be a new election to be who should be the Deputy Leader? But it's a huge fall from grace. This will echo across politics. I know that Nigel Farage, for example, the Reform UK leader, he saw Angela Rayner as the one leader, the senior person within the Labour Party who he feared the most. He said that told friends that Angela Rayner has a real impact on people. She makes a difference. They respect her. Her background, as I said, is extraordinary. She's done very, very well for someone who left school with no qualifications, a pregnant single mother, and look where she's got to. He has said that people react to that, they respond to that. She's well regarded by working people across the country, but she's out of this government because she admitted she didn't pay the right tax on the second home she bought in Hove.
Christopher, how dangerous is this for the Labour government? I mean, she was the darling of the left wing of the Labour Party. As you say, she is still Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. You can't sack her from that. This has huge ramifications for the government, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. This is someone who the left looked at as being certain that they had someone with their interests in mind at the very top of government. She was someone who was driving forward the reforms to workplace measures, giving people immediate rights to holiday and maternity or paternity leave on day one of their time in office. She was driving through, of course, the plans to build 1.5 million new homes. Those plans are still stuck in the House of Lords. That is part of this delivery programme from this government. It is a huge blow to the Labour Party. They've essentially lost the conscience of the working class at the top of the Labour government. It's a disaster for Sir Keir Starmer and a disaster for Labour. She's very widely regarded by her opponents, as I say, and I would argue quite well liked, but she's been frankly hoisted by her own petard. These are her tax affairs. She was very critical in the past of other Conservatives over their tax issues, notably Nadine Dorries when he was Chancellor before he had to resign following a similar report from Lauren Magnus back in 2023. So this government is in trouble, despite its large majority in the House of Commons, and needs to put that right very, very quickly.
Christopher, one final question for you. Angela Rayner has always denied that she wants to run as leader of the Labour Party. Do you think, though, she is more dangerous to Keir Starmer now she's on the backbenches? She's got time to gather her forces around her?
Yes, Dawn, she could well be. I'm seeing reports now that she has also quit as a deputy leader of the party. We can't confirm that yet. I'll bring that to you as soon as I can. If that's the case, there will be an election within this party, and I don't know how soon they can do it. Probably not in time for the Labour Party conference, which will try and ensure that they will replace that role. But it's moving very, very quickly in the past 10 minutes here in Whitehall. But we can report reports that she has quit as a deputy leader of the party.
OK, Christopher, thank you very much. We'll let you get across that breaking news. You say moving incredibly fast. That's political editor Christopher Hope on the live breaking news that Angela Rayner has gone. We are not entirely sure how eagerly she went, but she has stepped down not only as a minister, but also as deputy leader of the Labour Party. This has huge ramifications for the Labour Party, huge problems for Keir Starmer. So let's talk now to GB News deputy political editor Tom Harwood and GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster, who are in Birmingham for us at the Reform Party conference. Tom, you should be sitting next to me. A huge breaking news. This is not good for the Labour Party in any way, shape or form, is it?
No, this is an enormous bombshell. This has rocked the Labour Party. It's one of a number of scandals that the party has faced in just over 1 year of government. But it's hard to overstate how significant Angela Rayner was to the operation of government, how significant a figure she has been within the parliamentary Labour Party. Labour MPs have told me how significant she was when talking with rebels, for instance, during the rows over welfare reform, how she was sort of building up a base within the centre-left of the Labour Party. Perhaps she was someone with eyes on the leadership in the future. Well, now that both her Deputy Prime Ministerial position has gone, her Housing Secretary position has gone, and reportedly her Deputy Leader of the Labour Party position has gone too, it makes it hard to see how that sort of leadership ambition could stay afloat. With me here at the conference is, as you said, Catherine Forster, our political correspondent. Catherine, I mean, this is one of a string of resignations in just a short period in office.
Yes, it's incredible, isn't it? The Labour Party, before the last election, promised change. They promised to clean up politics. Angela Rayner, the biggest beast of all, apart from, of course, the Prime Minister, the only person who was higher than her. But look, we've had now a Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary resign for not paying £40,000 of tax, stamp duty, housing, her own brief, at a time that we've got a Chancellor looking to fill a black hole of between 20 and 50 billion pounds, looking at property taxes. We know that. There were calls from Kemi Badenoch this morning, the Conservative leader, saying we need to know what Angela Rayner communication has had with the Treasury. Did the timing of her property purchase, was this influenced by what may be coming down the line? But it's not just Angela Rayner, is it? Because just a few weeks ago we had Rushanara Ali, the homelessness minister, a corruption scandal. And we had Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, also resigning. This is a disastrous start for a government which had an incredibly rocky first year, wanted to come back after a difficult summer of small boats at record levels. Nigel Farage, he's here today, isn't he, hogging the headlines. They wanted to get a reset to relaunch. That is all fallen into the bin.
It is extraordinary that this is all happening on the eve of the conference season as well. The Labour Party will have to change its scheduling, really. Dawn, I'm going to throw back to you because I believe Christopher Hope has some more news for us.
Yes, thank you, Tom and Catherine. Let's go straight back to Christopher Hope now. Christopher, what's the latest?
That's right. So the exchange of letters, which always happens when you have these resignations, has now been released. The exchange of letters between Angela Rayner and the Prime Minister. I can read out parts of it now to you. Angela Rayner has told Keir Starmer she deeply regrets her decision not to seek additional specialist tax advice, given both my position as Housing Secretary and my complex family arrangements. She takes full responsibility for this error. She'd like to take the opportunity to repeat that it was never her intention, she says, to do anything other than pay the right amount. She also says that there is a significant toll that the ongoing pressure of the media is taking on her family. And she says that while she would expect proper scrutiny of her life and her family didn't choose to have their private lives interrogated and exposed so publicly. She's been clear throughout the process that her priority has been and always will be protecting her children, and the strain I'm putting them under through staying in post had become unbearable. Given the findings and impact on my family of the report by Sir Laurie Magnus, she is resigning, she says, as Deputy PM and also confirming as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. She goes on, for a teenage mum from a council estate in Stockport to serve at the highest level of government has been an honour of my life, she says. The challenges of government are nothing compared to the challenge of putting food on the table and getting a roof over the head when I brought up kids working as a home help. Too many people face the same across our country. She goes on, I've always known that politics changes lives because it can change mine. The last Labour government gave me the tools I needed to rebuild a better life for me and my young son. That's why I've been working relentlessly from day one in government to the same for the next generation. Every day in office, she says, she's worked hard to serve working class communities like the one she grew up in, which are too often overlooked, she says, by those in power. She's proud of all the decisions she took in government. She did it for them. She would never have become Deputy Prime Minister, she says, if not for the decisions taken by the last Labour government, giving her a council house to support her, Sure Start to help raise her children. She goes on to defend her Employment Rights Bill, which she says will be the biggest uplift in workers' rights in a generation. Landmark legislation, she says, a game-changing for millions. And also on the Renters' Rights Bill, the letter is long, I'll keep going if I may. She says, towards the end there, that she's she's lucky to have a great team around her, notably Matthew Pennycook, Jim McMahon, Alex Norris, Wahid Khan and Sharon Taylor. Being the chance to bring change to the lives of people in office, she says, those who she grew up alongside, she says, she will keep doing that whenever she can. She thanks Sir Keir Starmer for his leadership and his friendship, and she says she'll continue to serve our country and the party and the movement she loves in the weeks, months and years ahead. So at the end there, quite an emotional statement of support for the Prime Minister, and that maybe answers the question that you were raising there, Dawn, about whether she'll become a difficult person on the backbenches. As things stand, she isn't going to be that person, but wait and see. This autumn is going to be full of reports later on about the two-child benefit cap and other pressures. I'm just trying to pull up the Prime Minister's letter to, I've got the report here from Laurie Magnus. I'm just trying to find the letter here from the Prime Minister to Sir Keir Starmer. Now, what's fascinating is the letter from Sir Keir Starmer is handwritten. And that means that this has moved very, very quickly. Normally these things are typed letters. I can't remember a handwritten letter from the Prime Minister released in this way, not since Mark Sedwill resigned as the Cabinet Secretary in the Boris Johnson government. It's very rare to have a handwritten letter. That shows, I think, the pace of what's going on here. give you a flavour of what Sir Keir Starmer said to Angela Rayner. He says this: "Thank you for informing me of your decision to resign from the government. That means that Angela Rayner resigned. She wasn't sacked. I'm very sad that your time as the Deputy PM, Secretary of State and Deputy Leader of the party has ended in this way. As you know, we acted in accordance with the strengthened system relating to ministerial conduct that we put in place coming into government. You are right to refer yourself to the independent advisor on ministerial standards and right to act on his conclusions. Although I believe you have reached the right decision, it's one which I know is very painful for you." So the PM there saying he supports Angela Rayner's decision to resign over her tax affairs. "You've given your all to making the Labour government a success, and you've been a central part of our plan to make Britain fairer for working families. Your work at MCHG, that's the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, to help build the homes that Britain needs has been hugely important," he says, "and your work to create more fairness in the workplace through the Employment Rights Bill represents a very significant achievement that will change the lives of people." On a personal note, the Prime Minister says, "I'm very sad to be losing you from the government. You've been a trusted colleague," he says, "and a true friend for many years." He has nothing but admiration, he says, for Angela Rayner and huge respect for your achievements in politics. "I know that many people of all political persuasions admire that someone as talented as you is a living embodiment of social mobility." And that thought is shared by others, including Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader. "Given that you won't be part of the government, you'll remain a major figure in our party. I know you'll continue to fight for the causes that you so passionately care about. My very best wishes, with real sadness, Keir." I have never heard a more personal response to resignation in my time covering politics from a Prime Minister. A handwritten note there, one of real sadness, I think, writing back there to Angela Rayner.
OK, Christopher Hope, thank you very much for that. That is Keir Starmer's response, handwritten response, as Christopher Hope has just said, to Angela Rayner's resignation. Christopher Hope has just informed us that it was a resignation. She wasn't sacked. Her statement is very emotional. She is, as a lot of people do these days, saying that the pressure put on her family by the media plays a large part in her decision. Also, she is very proud of her record as a working-class woman who was pregnant at 16, working in a care home, to rise to being a deputy Prime Minister of this country. Very emotive letter from Angela Rayner and a very emotive response from Keir Starmer. Angela Rayner has gone, if you're just joining us. She has resigned from every position and now goes back to being a backbench MP. Joining us now is former Labour advisor Paul Richards. Paul, good to see you. What do you make of, this morning's very, very fast-moving story?
Hello, Dawn. I mean, it's an absolute bombshell exploding at the heart of the government. Be absolutely no doubt of that whatsoever, not least because she's resigned as deputy leader of the Labour Party, which is a democratically elected post. So that throws up that election that Keir Starmer has to face of somebody to be his deputy. But it's an absolute bombshell. I think she's done the right thing, the decent thing, by resigning under the kind of scrutiny that she had come. But it does now mean it's going to precipitate a reshuffle. So we're going to get some new ministers within hours. It blows open the conference season, which has just started this morning with Reform's conference, but Labour's conference is only 2 weeks away. And it just throws everything up in the air.
This comes literally days after they return from recess. Keir Starmer says we're again. This is phase two. Phase one wasn't going too brilliantly. Phase two, it's a disaster. There's no getting away. This is an absolute disaster for the Labour Party, isn't it, Paul? Well, I'm, as you know, often accused of putting a gloss on things for the Labour Party. But I mean, in this regard, yes, it is genuinely a major bombshell. It is going to be something that the Prime Minister is going to have to summon up all of his skill and dexterity to put right. I mean, the reshuffle gives him that chance to put some new ministers in post, breathe new life into the government, into departments, reset that sense of purpose that people wanted so desperately when they elected Labour last year, and start to do some of the change on which the
the government will be judged ultimately. But yeah, for now, I mean, this is obviously not in the plan. You know, phase 2 did not include a reshuffle and a deputy leadership contest.
No, indeed. And obviously, we are literally days away from, well, weeks away from the Labour Party conference. How damaging is this for Keir Starmer personally? It's a very emotional letter he's written to Angela there, but there's lots of anger in this country about Angela Rayner's behaviour. How damaging is that to him personally?
Well, I think there's a lot of sympathy too, actually, and certainly the Labour family will now rally round because she's somebody that has got a lot of support, a lot of sympathy. I think there'll be a human level.
For Keir Starmer or Angela Rayner?
For Rayner, but also Starmer still, you know, retains the respect and like of the Labour Party, so there won't be those kind of grumblings. But, you know, I think at a human level, it is obviously a tragedy for Angela Rayner and her family as well. I mean, you know, the fact that her home was vandalised and, you know, all of this scrutiny on her disabled child and so on, it's just really too much to bear. So there will be a human level sympathy, but the politics of it, you know, the bit that gets us all excited, is going to be really interesting to see how he comes through the conference season. I mean, the deputy leader, for example, traditionally does a big speech at the conference, and there's a big sort of rallying cry. Used to be John Prescott's starring moment, you know, at the conference where he would rally the troops on the last day. Well, obviously that's not going to be happening now. No deputy leader speech there. How's he going to address? How's he, as in Starmer, going to address this in his big speech early in the week, his big leader's speech, which is the set piece moment to talk to the nation and beyond? You know, so all of the planning around these events, these conferences, which are, you know, quite significant in our political calendar, all of that planning is pretty much out of the door. Don't forget also there's a huge fringe of events going on where ministers will have said, I will come along and talk about our plans for education or law or housing or whatever. And of course, those ministers may not be the ministers by tea time. So it's going to be chaos from that regard as well.
Paul, just finally, I have to bring this up. I am sympathetic as a woman, but this is not something that just happened to Angela Rayner. This is caused by something she did, or rather she didn't do. She's not without blame here.
Well, I mean, she's taken the blame. She's taken responsibility for her actions. And in the exchange of letters that Chris Hope was reading out there, you know, it makes it perfectly clear she is resigning because she recognises she is the author of her downfall. And she's doing the decent thing by going, and not just from the role in government, but also as deputy leader, these two very different roles. So yeah, she's taking the cop. And by the way, she's not the only person, is she? There are lots of other MPs with more than one home and different arrangements in place, and you know, ownership is in different names, all that sort of stuff. So you know, there is a lot more of this going on. I think there is some truth too, and I know this is contestable, but a little bit of truth in the idea that she was picked on just because of who she was as well as what she did.
Because she's a woman, because she's working class?
Yeah, because she's unusual as a politician. I think perhaps we price in that the men in suits have got multiple homes in different names. But for her, as somebody who's made good and done well from a difficult start, you know, maybe she is treated a little bit differently.
Well, Paul, I'm all for working class girls made good, obviously, but most of us do actually remember to pay our taxes and certainly our stamp duty correctly. And we're not all housing secretary. That's the difference.
That's why she's gone. That's why she's gone. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm not sort of exonerating her by saying, well, she's working class. I'm just saying, you know, and she's done the right thing by going. But I am saying she is treated to a different standard, perhaps, than some of the other anonymous politicians who are not quite so eye-catching and don't have a camera crew on them all the time and get away with it. That's all.
Okay,
the
and nor
point
are they. I keep coming back to nor are they housing secretary. Paul, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us. That's former Labour advisor Paul Richards. Obviously, please do let me know what you think about this one at gbnews.com/your say. Let's go back now to News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood and GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster, who are in Birmingham for us at the Reform Party conference, which is going on at the same time. Gosh, Tom, OK, what do you make of it so far?
Gosh is completely the correct response. I mean, what a bombshell, as everyone has been saying throughout this afternoon. This is the one thing this government did not want to happen. I mean, how many ministers now have been lost? Angela Rayner, one of the most famous faces in this government, one of the sort of most wanted, if you think about Labour conference, which is happening in just a couple of weeks, who are going to be the most attended speeches? Angela Rayner would be near the top of that list. She's got an adoring fan base within the Labour Party. She's a controversial figure across the country, but my goodness me, she is part of the soul of this government that has just been ripped from her position. Let's speak to Catherine Forster, our political correspondent. This is a massive hole now in the heart of government that is going to be difficult to fix without perhaps a major reshuffle.
Yes, indeed. Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, two really key roles, especially as the government have promised, haven't they, to build 1.5 million new homes, a very ambitious target, which looks like they're not making great progress on it so far. I mean, in the case of Deputy Prime Minister, they don't actually have to have one. They could perfectly easily just not fill that role.
Famously, Theresa May didn't have one.
Precisely. It's not necessary. I mean, Pat McFadden would be an obvious choice if they wanted to do that. I think Housing Secretary is more interesting because clearly that role has got to be filled. That's a really important mission. Remember all these missions that they used to talk about. We don't know. I mean, imagine we'll find out later today. But I was just reading through the letters, the exchange of letters. The Prime Minister, obviously very sad, the handwritten note saying how sad he was to be losing her from government, talking about how she was the living embodiment of social mobility. And Angela Rayner's letter, clearly taking responsibility, saying that she'd made a mistake, but deeply sad, but proud of her achievements. But look, I was reading Sir Laurie Magnus's letter about what exactly happened and drilling down into the nitty-gritty, and he's very clear that she did breach the ministerial code. I think there was absolutely no choice that she was going to have to go. And fundamentally, she didn't take sufficient care. She did get advice, but the advice that she was given was caveated, and it was made clear that it did not constitute expert tax advice. So he said, it was deeply regrettable that specific tax advice was not sought. And why I find this so extraordinary is that it's only just over a year ago since there was a lot of other stories about Angela Rayner's property dealings and what she had or hadn't paid with properties up in Greater Manchester. Those stories were never absolutely answered. But you would think that given that over a year ago, and I was at a lunch at which she was in tears about it then, given that then a year ago, that she would have been so careful to get this right. And yet ultimately she wasn't, and she's paid the very highest price.
She was told to get the expert tax advice. She either forgot, refused or ignored and did not get that advice, and now she's out. Catherine, we're going to come back to you in just a moment, but I believe we've got some more from Christopher Hope live at Downing Street.
Yes, we do. Tom and Catherine, thank you very much. We'll be back to you soon, but for now we are going back to Downing Street to talk to Christopher Hope. Christopher.
That's right, Dawn. We're getting some response now from Kemi Badenoch. She's of course, the Tory leader. They are saying, the Tories are saying that it is hang on for too long. They should have been acting on it far more quickly to deal with the future of Angela Rayner. Of course, Angela Rayner using a letter there to criticise the media for putting pressure on her and her family. But of course, part of the problem may be that Angela Rayner didn't see how it looked soon enough, and that put a lot of pressure over the past week on the Deputy Prime Minister.
Okay, Christopher, the one element in all of this that we don't know what's going to happen is that HMRC are still doing their investigation. We've still got that to come, haven't we? Which could be even more bad news.
Well, it could be bad news because it looks like she may have to pay a fine for not paying the correct amount of stamp duty, of course, it being £40,000. Sir Mel Stride, he's the Conservative Shadow Chancellor, he said it took far too long to get this point. He says Angela Rayner tried to hang on to her job and Labour did everything they could to protect her, even as serious questions mounted. It's utterly extraordinary, says Sir Mel Stride, that while working families and businesses are being hammered by Labour's tax hikes, Angela Rayner failed to pay the right amount of stamp duty by tens of thousands of pounds. No one is above the law, Sir Mel Stride says. No government minister should be setting the rules when they fail to keep them themselves. That is the point. I think the criticism this government isn't doing what it says it should be doing in terms of tax won't go away with the removal of Angela Rayner from office. It's a real blow to this government, one that they can ill afford after relaunching, frankly, what they're trying to do last Monday.
It is interesting, Christopher, to hear the reaction from other politicians, because Angela Rayner was often the very first in opposition to start saying people should be investigated, they should step down. And Tony Blair wrote in his book, when you're in opposition, be careful what you say, what fuss you make about perceived wrongs of those in government. Angela Rayner really should have taken that advice, shouldn't she?
Yes, well, she was obviously in opposition, and she did that video, didn't she, criticising Nadine Zahawi over his tax affairs. That led to the resignation. I've got the statement here now from Kemi Badenoch. She says briefly on the social media, Angela Rayner is finally gone, but she says only because of Sir Keir Starmer's weakness that she wasn't sacked 3 days ago. Britain deserves better. And I wonder whether the fact that Angela Rayner was allowed to resign, take her own future into her own hands, rather than be sacked by the Prime Minister, whether this might be pressure or draw into question the PM's judgment. Why did he allow Angela Rayner to last for so long after those reports first emerged of the tax avoidance? Why was it that Peter Kyle, who's the tech secretary, was allowed to accuse, frankly, journalists and critics of treating her differently due to her accent and background, when in fact it was simply a case of someone not paying the right amount of tax? And of course MPs pass laws which levy taxes on us all. They have to be held, therefore, to a higher standard.
That's indeed very true, and that does seem to be a lot of viewers and listeners are getting in touch, Christopher, saying, hold on a minute, this is hypocrisy. Keir Starmer needed a backbone about a week ago on this situation. To have let it rumble on this far is even more damaging to this government.
I think you're right, Dawn. I look at those remarks by Angela Rayner about her family, and of course no one wants people's families in public life to be brought into the political conversation. But the fact was she had to explain the issue of the trust involving her disabled child, and that did bring them into the limelight. And had she instead acted very quickly to resign straight away, that wouldn't have had to happen. So the pressure that's built through the week from media scrutiny of her private life is simply because she failed to come clean originally, recognise what had happened here, what she admitted to, and resign straight away. And I think to blame the media for that isn't really maybe fair on the journalism behind this, because they are trying to look at MPs' private lives. If they are not paying the right amount of tax, that has to be a matter of public interest.
I mean, she has obviously got the nickname of Angela Blamer now, because she has, up until now, blamed everybody. I know in the letter she says, I take full responsibility, but, and then she goes, but the pressure on my family from the media was impossible. Once again, it's the media being blamed, when really the only person to blame in this is Angela Rayner herself.
That's right. We do see this from politicians, and you have to say it is on them. She may, by her own account, she made mistakes here by not getting specialist tax advice, not recognising that the home she was buying in Hove was a second home because of the way the law would treat a house owned in this sense by or with a big stake of it by the stake, but by the trust set up by her children. But yeah, it does seem that she's written a long letter, an emotional letter here, but it really is on her. She does say in the letter, though, to be fair to her, that she takes responsibilities for her role as Deputy PM and Secretary of State for Housing, as well as being an MP, with the utmost seriousness. But I think to try and pin the blame on the reporting, I think almost masks the fact this is all on her. Choices made by her, mistakes made by her, and she has paid the highest price.
She is, to be fair to Angela Rayner, a fighter, though, Christopher. This is a long way from the last we've heard of Angela Rayner, isn't it?
It certainly is. I mean, she is a fighter. She came into Parliament back in 2015. She left school with no qualifications, a pregnant single mum. She became a care worker, a union worker for the union Unison. She came back into Parliament in 2015, deputy leader in 2020. She was seen as the person most likely to replace Sir Keir Starmer, certainly at the height of the Boris Johnson government. That is now over. That can't happen. I can't see that happening, given the history of this issue with with tax. So she's a fighter, but she'll be fighting from the back benches. But the letter she's written to Sir Keir Starmer, they talk of friendship, both Sir Keir Starmer in a very rare handwritten letter from the Prime Minister, and also from Angela Rayner. She's making clear that she does value Sir Keir as friends. But now she's moved aside. We're going to see probably quite a major reshuffle in coming hours and days of this government. They need to find a new deputy leader of the party. That'll be an elected position. A deputy leader of the government that'll be appointed by Sir Keir Starmer, or maybe he may choose not to appoint that until the election has happened of Labour members. Away from that, don't forget Poppy Gustafsson. She's the investment minister. She's resigned. There are 2 other jobs also going for homelessness and in net zero. So 4 jobs going. We are expecting a big shake-up here in Downing Street, maybe as soon as this afternoon.
OK, great. Thank you very much. That's Christopher Hope there, bringing us up to date on Angela Rayner resigning from, as you just heard Christopher Hope say, all her jobs, certainly as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and as Housing Secretary. OK, let's speak to former Labour MP now, Khalid Mahmood. Khalid, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of what you've heard this morning so far?
Well, it's very sad to see somebody like Angela having to leave because of a mistake. And I think you have to understand that the mistake was made not in normal circumstances, but the issue is that the original house was put into a trust. So therefore, it isn't quite straightforward as to whether it would qualify as a first home or second home. And I think that was the issue where she should have taken proper advice to deal with it. And that is the failure that Angela's now had to answer for. And obviously, quite rightly, taken a decision by the Standard Czar, by the Prime Minister, to say that at the moment, that's the issue, and therefore she has to go.
Khalid, how damaging is this for the Labour Party and Keir Starmer in particular?
Well, look, I think, first of all, Keir Starmer has stood by Angela, and that was the right thing to do. I totally disagree with Cameron Badenoch saying that she should have been thrown to the wolves at the first chance. The leadership equalities are that you allow a process to take place and then deal with it. This is exactly what Sir Keir Starmer has done. And I think that's the important thing. And I think now we have to look to see what are the people that we have to bring in and what we do with the process of who comes in next. Of course, the deputy leadership election isn't an election across the party members and the members of Parliament and other people as well. So we have to look at that quite clearly and see how that process is going to take place. But immediately, obviously, there are held positions in government which the Prime Minister has to look at.
Well, this is the fifth minister that Labour have lost in various scandals, and they've only been in power for a year.
Well, this is the key thing. I mean, when we came in, Sir Keir said that we must look at the standards in public life. And I think it's important that we need to do that. And I think when those standards are found to be failing, then action needs to be taken. And I'm surprised sometimes at some of the individuals, when they're in this position, that they should understand what position they're in. In some instances, they should make those declarations before they get appointed to these jobs. And I think this puts the whole party and certainly the Prime Minister in a very difficult position.
Do you think, Khalid, it would have been more dignified and probably better for the Labour government if she had resigned earlier and Keir Starmer had shown more of a backbone in making a decision? He has, 2 days ago, he was patting her on the head, literally, and saying, I'm very proud of you, working class girl, etc., etc. We know how that one goes. And now it's like, well, it was untenable, you've got to go.
No, I think what I've said earlier is simply this, that as a leader of the party, he has to stand with his colleague, with his deputy leader, until the standards report came through. He could have decided to, as I said, throw her to the wolves, and he didn't. He didn't stamp over her. He stood by her, which is the most difficult thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do that, and he's done that. And so therefore, I don't think he deserves blame on that issue. But the issue really here for us to deal with is the fact that perhaps the decision, knowing what Angela knew, but that decision should have been taken earlier.
OK, Khalid, what do you think's next for Angela? What's she going to do now?
Well, look, Angela is a brave woman. She's fought all her life through As Chris has just already said, you know, she was pregnant when she left school, a single mother, and look where she's got to. It's a huge success what she's achieved. And of course, this is a blow, but this is not going to sort of terminate her politics and her view of representing people from the working classes, people from the lower tiers of our society, where she started off and got to the best levels. And she wants to promote more people to do that. And I wish her all the very best for that.
OK, Labour MP Khalid Mahmood there. Thank you very much, Khalid, for joining us today. OK, now let's go back to Birmingham, where we have Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood and GBNews political correspondent Catherine Forster, who are at the Reform Party conference. Tom, it just keeps moving. It's an incredibly fast track. What is the reaction there like, though?
Well, there has been some significant reaction here and some breaking news for you, Dawn. Nigel Farage has moved his speech. He was going to be speaking later this afternoon at 4 p.m. The time for his speech will now be in 15 minutes' time. He's brought it forward to 1 p.m., no doubt, to respond to this crisis at the heart of government, the resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister. We know that Nigel Farage is a man who likes to speak off the cuff. He's not really one for an auto cue, so it could be that we're going to see some pretty unfettered reaction live on stage from Nigel Farage in just a few minutes' time. There have been an announcement over the loudspeakers here at the centre of the conference, and I have to say delegates in their thousands have been flocking to the main auditorium to hear what Nigel Farage will be saying in around 15 minutes' time. This is his chance as the man that leads the party, that leads the polls right now, to respond to what is undoubtedly a crisis at the heart of government. A scandal that has rocked Number 10, the Deputy Prime Minister out, and of course with it the Housing Secretary role too vacant. But also, as Nigel Farage has also said in a video posted to social media, this could mean splits within the Labour Party. His analysis has been that the upcoming and inevitable deputy leadership election will open cavernous splits within the Labour Party, because those on the left of the Labour Party will use it as an opportunity to tear chunks out of the government, saying that it's been going in the wrong direction. Similarly, you'll see the same from those on the right of the Labour Party too. Given that this is an elected position, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, elected from the around 300,000 members of the Labour Party, well, that could be a pretty fraught contest. And my goodness me, there is a lot to say about how the party has been running the government over the course of the last 13 or 14 months. This could be a bloodbath, and Nigel Farage's prediction is it will lead to great splits within the Labour Party when these candidates declare and when that election gets going.
Indeed, and we saw what happened to the Conservative Party beforehand with these seismic splits within the party. The self-same thing is happening now to Labour, the grown-ups, the people back in the room, the people that were looking after the working people. Now, they're going to have to be looking after their own backsides.
Well, it's certainly a perilous moment for the government, and we've seen how their polling rating has been precipitously falling since they got elected on the 4th of July 2024. There has been no government in modern time that has fallen as quickly as they have after a general election, to a position where occasionally they dip to third in the polls, often second, but around 20%. I mean, they would lose hundreds of seats were an election held tomorrow. And clearly this is going to be a very difficult moment for the government, given that Angela Rayner was one of the most recognisable members of that government. There are moments in any parliament when it really feels like the wheels are falling off the bus. And I think that this will be one of those moments. This afternoon will be remembered at the time of the next general election, which could be, well, 4 years away. But even so, people will remember the moment Keir Starmer lost his Deputy Prime Minister, lost his Housing Secretary, and faced a deputy leadership election within his party, at a time when the party is supposed to be preparing for a budget that is going to be widely predicted to hurt people with tax rises. Is this the time that we really want to be seeing internal party politics at the top of the Labour Party? Will it look introspective at a time when people are hurting in their pockets? This is a time of peril for the Labour Party politically, because just at the time that they should be talking to the country, when people are feeling financially hurt, when there's a crisis at the border, when the small boat crossings are the highest they have ever been, at just that moment, when there are so many crises on so many fronts from this government, they'll be looking towards themselves with an internal election. It couldn't come at a worse time.
Really couldn't. Thank you very much, Tom. We'll be coming back to you very soon. And Tom was just breaking the news there that Nigel Farage has brought his speech forward from 3 o'clock to 1 o'clock. So that is in about 10 minutes' time. Obviously, well known for speaking off the cuff, not scripted. So that he's brought his speech forward at the Reform Conference to 1 o'clock this afternoon. You don't want to miss what he has to say. But as Tom Harwood was saying there, it is a time for peril for the Labour Party, but for all of us as well. We have that budget coming up at the end of November, and one of the big tax issues expects to be around the issue of housing, stamp duty, buying and selling, whether you're a renter, a homer, a landlord, it doesn't matter. There is going to be a tax on you. So let's find out now more from former Conservative advisor Alex Dean about how he feels about the situation this morning. Alex, good to see you. It's been a pretty fast-moving, shocking morning. I mean, peril for the Labour Party.
Yeah, I agree. But what a bunch of softies you've had on with you so far. I don't know why that thumbs down has appeared in front of me on my screen, at least. Your colleagues before have been saying, well, this won't be the last we've seen of Angela Rayner. I think the case for a comeback, even within this parliament for Angela Rayner, would have been far stronger if she had fallen on her sword at the start of the week. Instead, she's dragged this out to the last moment when the inquiry comes out against her and finds that she breached the ministerial code. She knew that she'd got this wrong. That's why she went off and got extra advice for herself. If she'd done that, then she could, and said, I promptly, first hands up, I got it wrong, then the case for a comeback would have been much stronger. As it is, I'm afraid there is very little sympathy for her on my part, really for three reasons. First, if you know you've got complex tax affairs and you're the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Housing, it's on you to be doubly sure that you've got the right answer. After all, the rest of us are accountable for what we say to the taxman, so why shouldn't she be? The second reason I'm not very sympathetic is the hypocrisy. She stuck it to everybody when she was in opposition. She demanded everyone under an accusation resigned before the investigation even started, people like Nadine Dorries. She always said that people should resign, and she didn't. And the third reason I'm not sympathetic to her is the one that you've been striking on so well with Tom, that this puts her party in a bad position. If she'd gone promptly, she would have saved them that pain. The Prime Minister of this country went out at the beginning of this week and said any criticism of Angela Rayner was sexist and classist. That's what he said on Monday, and she resigned on Friday.
It doesn't actually paint Keir Starmer in a flattering light as well. I mean, he's often criticised for not being able to make a decision, not having a backbone. I mean, this actually illustrates that very well indeed, doesn't it, Alex?
The Prime Minister looks weak now. It was obvious that she'd done something wrong. That's why she went and got advice. This is the second time she's been under investigation for housing-related tax rule breaches. And he should have just said, Angela, don't you think it's time for you to go? And if she didn't heed that invitation, he should have made her go, at least from the roles he's capable of dismissing her from. She might then have tried to cling on as deputy leader of the party until at least the inquiry found that she had breached the ministerial code whilst still a minister. This was an opportunity for Keir Starmer to show that he puts the country first, and instead he showed that he puts the party first.
Alex, do you think Keir Starmer can recover from this?
Yes, I do. He can, in the end, look, in the end, the fact that Angela Rayner claimed to have got really good advice and had actually used some poor, blameless bunch of conveyancing specialists on a back street in Hove. It wasn't down to Keir Starmer. The fact she put the wrong number down wasn't down to Keir Starmer. The fact that she didn't pay £40,000 of stamp duty, a lot of money in anyone's book, isn't down to Starmer. He's handled it badly, but he can move on from it. But no question he's weakened as a result of this. He's weakened because it shows he couldn't control his own party. It's weakened because he showed he couldn't control his own Deputy Prime Minister.
Alex, where do you think Angela Rayner goes next? What does she do now? I mean, she's not, to be fair to the woman, she is not a quitter. What do you expect her to do now?
Media gig, turn out to be a talking head. Probably not do I'm a celebrity, but you know that sort of thing. She's going to hang on as an MP at least for the moment, but she may come to realise that that's not quite as glamorous or exciting as being Deputy Prime Minister was. I will just remind you, even if she'd got the taxes completely correct, she sent a message to her constituents that she didn't want to live with them or anywhere near them when she bought a house hundreds of miles away on the south coast, when she's an MP for Greater Manchester. So I'm just really not sure her heart is in this game anymore, especially if she's not going to be in one of the great offices of state. So I imagine she's going to do something else. She could do very well she could do a job, not quite as good as you do, of course, but she could do a job like yours. She could be on a channel, probably not GBN, but she could be on a channel in the UK as we have more and more outlets. I just don't really see much of a political future for her.
Alex, just finally, one very quick question, because a lot of our readers, that's Freudian slip from newspaper days, our viewers are asking this very question. She mentioned the pressure on her family, her disabled child in particular. This is a woman that actually voted to get rid of personal independence payments that would have affected many, many families with disabled children.
I cannot quite understand how she used that. I mean, of course, at a personal level, one has deep sympathy for any individual family going through those things. But Angela Rayner made a virtue of saying that that child was her miracle baby from the NHS at the time when she and her family were bringing a case for malpractice against the NHS relating to the pregnancy that she had that resulted in the disability that we understand he has. I just cannot understand the way that she is willing to do these things in the public eye, and I'm afraid this is just the latest example of it.
OK, Alex, thank you very much. That's former Conservative advisor Alex Dean there. Well, OK, we are expecting to hear live from Nigel Farage at the Reform Party conference, but here is what he has had to say on the matter so far.
It was inevitable, wasn't it, really? You can't be Housing Secretary and avoid £40,000 worth of stamp duty. It's just as simple as that. So, in the last few minutes, Angela Rayner was gone, but not just as Housing Secretary. Now, more significantly, she's gone as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and Deputy Prime Minister. That means there will be an internal election within the Labour Party, and you're going to see the hard left of Labour shouting very, very loudly. For the last few years, the story has been splits within the Conservative Party. Mark my words, within weeks, it'll be splits within the Labour Party.
OK, now let's go back to GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood, who is indeed in Birmingham at that Reform Party conference for us. Tom.
Yeah, hugely exciting atmosphere here at the Reform Party conference. We've just had our second loudspeaker announcement bellowing through the main hall here at the conference, telling people to get into that auditorium on the other side of the black curtain behind me, because that is where Nigel Farage is going to be speaking in less than 5 minutes' time. And of course, we can understand that this will not be the speech that he was going to be giving at 4 o'clock. Much of it might be similar, but of course there will have been hastily rewritten parts. No doubt it will address head-on this issue that the government has lost its Deputy Prime Minister, has lost its Housing Secretary, and is now facing a deputy leadership election. And Dawn, as we've been discussing, this could not come at a much worse time for the government. If you just look on every front, the fires that this government is battling, whether it's the war in Europe, the inflation that is rising, the small boat crossings that have never been higher, or indeed that budget that we're expecting at the end of November now, that is almost certain, that is nailed on to be raising the tax burden that we face in this country too. What a time to be having that deputy leadership election. What a time to be navel-gazing, really, when a Prime Minister should be sort of looking out to the country, when a government, really, when a country wants to see its government looking out to the country rather than in to its party. Keir Starmer used to have a phrase in politics. He said, country first, party second. Well, I'm afraid that all of the optics of a leadership election are precisely the opposite. It makes it seem as if it's party first, country second. And that's a very difficult message, even a subliminal one, to be being put out there at a time of crisis. Because when you look at the opinion polls, you do really feel a sense of crisis in the United Kingdom at the moment. People feel worse off in their pocket. They feel that this is a government that just doesn't have a grip on some of the most seismic issues of our time, whether it's the asylum hotels up and down the country, the small boats coming across the channel, the sense that the economy is sort of uncontrolled by the Chancellor, that the Chancellor tries to pull a lever and that lever isn't attached to anything at all, that taxes are raised and yet less money comes into the exchequer. Wherever you look, you find that the government is facing problems, not least in this brief of housing that will now have to be filled by the Prime Minister. Who is he going to pick to be his next housing secretary when it's looking like a poisoned chalice? Independent analysis has suggested that the government is going to miss its housing target by more than 500,000 homes. They were meant to build 1.5 million homes over the course of this Parliament, and they're going to build less than 1 million. I mean, this is serious stuff. Failure on every front, and yet, looking at what this might mean for party politics in general, we're already seeing what it means in the opinion polls. We've already seen this decline from the Labour Party's position, once dominant in those polls, now being almost unprecedentedly weak. We've seen the Reform Party rise to that top spot in the opinion polls, and now a significant moment for Nigel Farage. Can he rise to the occasion in just a minute or two's time as he takes to the stage? How will he respond to the crisis that the government is now facing? That is something that we will all be watching very, very closely indeed.
We will indeed. Tom, thank you very much for now. We will be going back as soon as Nigel Farage starts speaking. OK. Well, good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 1 o'clock on Friday, the 5th of September. I'm Dawn Neeson, and Tom Harwood is in Birmingham live for the Reform Party conference. Angela Rayner has resigned from the government over failure to pay enough tax on her flat. So Keir Starmer says she will remain a major figure in the party over. Reaction is pouring in. Nigel Farage says the splits in Labour are coming. It's as he gears up to address the Reform Conference in Birmingham in the next few minutes.
This is a significant moment for Nigel Farage. How will he respond to Angela Rayner's resignation? He's moved his speech from 4 p.m. to 1 p.m. We'll hear it soon.
And in other breaking news, Buckingham Palace has announced the Duchess of Kent has died at the age of 92. In a statement, the palace said she passed away peacefully last night, surrounded by her family. We'll have the latest throughout the afternoon for you. So let's go straight now back to Birmingham live at the Reform Conference, where GB News presenter Tom Harwood has all the details for us.
That's right, we're expecting Nigel Farage to start speaking any moment time. So if I am rudely interrupted, please do not be alarmed. We'll be going straight to Nigel Farage as soon as he makes it on to that stage. But just to re-emphasise, Dawn, for anyone tuning in right now, this is a really significant moment. Nigel Farage wasn't meant to speak at 1 o'clock, or indeed a couple of minutes after 1. He sometimes likes to keep us waiting just on tenterhooks for a couple more minutes. But But this was not meant to be what Nigel Farage did today. This speech that he's going to give was not meant to be what he said today. But the entire conference schedule has been upended by the significant news that broke an hour ago. The Deputy Prime Minister has resigned. This, of course, after failing to pay £40,000 in tax, a really significant financial scandal. We learn that she failed to take the proper advice. When she asked for advice on the purchase of a new beachfront home down in Hove, she was told that she needed to get expert tax advice, and she failed to get that expert tax advice. For such a senior politician to fail to follow that advice is a serious breach of the ministerial code. That's what the ethics advisor Sir Laurie Magnus found, and that's why Angela Rayner had to go. But this opens so many questions now for the Labour Party. It opens questions for the Prime Minister. How does he reshuffle those cards in his hand? How does he put together effectively a new cabinet? Two roles that have to be filled, and perhaps more if people are promoted from lower positions, then they have to be backfilled too. And also, of course, the issue of a deputy leadership election within the Labour Party. A significant moment where you might well see, as Nigel Farage is predicting, some pretty rough fighting between factions within the Labour Party, splits within that party over the direction that they have led the country over the course of the last 14 months that they have been in government. Really significant goings on that will no doubt be addressed by Nigel Farage. But of course, he is the leader of the party that is leading in the polls. There is a weight of responsibility on his shoulders. It's moments like this, it's speeches like the one that Nigel Farage is about to give, that will really be defining moments of what is in effect the long campaign, that long march to what we expect to be the 2029 general election. Although, of course, we were pre-briefed ahead of what Nigel Farage was going to be saying later on today, that he was predicting there could be an earlier election. Now, people that I've spoken to who in the Westminster bubble don't believe that that is a possibility, but Nigel Farage puts the possibility at around 30% likelihood chance of an early election as soon as 2027. Perhaps that theme will be built upon in his speech as well. He wants to get the Reform battle troops here at the Reform Party conference ready for an election. He senses weakness in the Labour Party. He senses weakness in the government. And we've seen that with the resignation of the corruption minister, of the resignation of the transport secretary. We've seen that of the resignation of so many different ministers over time, the homelessness minister as well, the early booting out of the Prime Minister's first Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, the number of people who have left Downing Street, his former head of communications gone too. I mean, so many people who were at the heart of this government, at the start of this government, no longer there. It does breed this sense of crisis, and we know if there's one thing Nigel Farage can feed upon, well, that is a crisis. He was able to do so with the wobbles that the Conservative Party saw in their last 2 years in government. Will the same happen now with the Labour Party?
Okay. Tom, thank you very much. We'll be going back live to Tom in Birmingham as soon as Nigel Farage starts his speech, which he has brought forward from 4 o'clock till 1 o'clock. Don't miss it. We will be going there as soon as he starts speaking. Joining me now in the studio is Conservative Party Chairman Kevin Hollinrake and political commentator Andy Twelves. Thank you very much for joining us. Kevin, let's come to you first. Just give me a quick sum up how you feel the morning's news has gone and what it means to the Labour Party.
Well, obviously, Angela Rayner had no choice. The independent advisor found against her. We thought she was wrong to wait until the outcome of his report, because it's clear she'd breached the rules and breached her moral position she's taken on other people in a similar situation. So I don't think she had any choice. I think the most damning aspect of this, if you look at what the independent advisor said, is this only came to light because of intense public scrutiny. It wasn't because Angela Rayner held her hands up to this. So I think she had no choice. I think it leaves the Labour Party in a complete mess. It leaves questions that need to be answered by Keir Starmer, what he knew and when. And really, the other question we've got to answer here is she going to get a payout? Because she's called on other ministers in similar situations not to get one. But this has only come to light because of dogged determination by the media, by some elements of the media, by our party, by Kemi.
Who, interestingly, she blamed the media for being part of her downfall.
I mean, gosh almighty, it's like blaming the weather. The media is part of what we do, and sometimes you benefit from it, other times it holds you to account. And you and the Telegraph and other parts of the media have done an excellent job. We've been pushing on this since May of this year. Kemi was very keen. She could see that something was wrong here. We've been pushing on this since May, and particularly since August when this broke about this third home. So really, I don't think any of this would have come to light had that pressure not been applied to Angela Rayner.
OK, let's bring you in, Andy. Andy, do you have any sympathy for her?
I mean, I have sympathy for any, member of the public who faces scrutiny from the media and faces sometimes quite nasty stuff on social media. But fundamentally, I agree with Kevin that she had to go. The independent investigation found that she had breached the ministerial code. It was only right that she resigned from her ministerial positions, and I think alongside that, the deputy leadership of the Labour Party. Fundamentally, we cannot have someone in government who has violated the ministerial code. I mean, it's great that we've got an expert from the Conservative Party. Over the last Conservative government, we had so many breaches of the ministerial code. I truly feel honoured to be sat with such an expert.
OK, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I've never breached the ministerial code.
I know, the Tory government, how many ministers did?
I totally get people make mistakes. We're human beings, people make mistakes, and people should resign when they had. I think the difficulty for Angela Rayner here
OK, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you there, gentlemen. We are just returning back to Birmingham, Reform UK, where Nigel Farage is about to speak.
Is now topping a national poll. I've had some great successes in life. I've had plenty of failures. But what I bring to this now is experience. What I bring to this now is passion. I'm not afraid of anything. I believe that reform represents a silent majority in Britain. And when it comes to country, of what a nation is, this is where I do personally want to confront the Prime Minister head on. There's nobody on these issues of sovereignty, on these issues of national self-interest. There is nobody more determined than me.
Can we make history? Are you going to be part of it? Thank you very, very much indeed.
We are all ships rising on a turquoise tide, headed ever closer towards winning the next general election. It's been a day of some considerable news. It seems that female politicians are all the rage at the moment. We had our own very positive announcement overnight, of which you will hear more. But the reason that I've moved this speaking time forward is because this government is deep in crisis. Not only have they fallen into deep popularity within just a year of winning the general election, but it's become clear to all of us that it is a cabinet of wholly unqualified people to run our country. They are not fit to govern. I suppose we're lucky in one way that at least the Chancellor was a senior economist at the Bank of England for 10 years. And that the Business Secretary is a fully qualified solicitor. And that the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, until half an hour ago, is an accomplished property developer and speculator. But you simply can't get away, can you, from being the Housing Secretary and avoiding £40,000 of council tax. And it screams to entitlement. It screams to a government that, despite all the promises that this would be a new, different kind of politics, is as bad, if not worse, than the one that went before. We've been told that right now the Prime Minister is organising a reshuffle. Yet another reset. And that the names of the new cabinet will come out later on this afternoon. Well, I didn't want the Prime Minister to do anything to spoil our conference, and that's why I've come on the stage now to say they are not fit to govern. The Conservative Party are riven. In fact, Nadine Dorries said overnight the Conservative Party are dead. Deservedly so. Deservedly so. And they will not be forgiven. They will not be forgiven for their betrayals over the course of the last 5 years. Mass migrations, illegal immigrants crossing the Channel, sky-high taxes, and much else. But in the middle of this meltdown of these two parties that have dominated for 100 years British politics, in the middle of all of this, there is a new, strong, unified party that speaks with one voice, that knows it's determined to put the interests of Britain and the British people above that of outdated international treaties or dubious courts. We are the patriotic party. We are the party that stands up for decent working people, and we are the party on the rise. Just think, I stood before you this time last year. At this very conference, we only had a handful of branches around the country. We now have 450 branches that we've set in place. As we entered the general election of 2024, we had 30,000 paid-up members. In the last hour, we've gone through 240,000 members. This time last year, we had very few councillors. Now we have over 900, and I've got to tell you, last year I said to all of you, May the 1st is coming. Volunteer to stand in the county elections. And even though the government cancelled the elections in 9 of the counties that we would have won, we still won outright 10 county councils and became the largest party in 3 others. Unbelievable. And I'll be honest with you, as I toured round the country on May the 2nd, I frankly myself couldn't believe just how well we'd done. Couldn't believe
the extent to which we'd caught the mood. And the real icing on the cake, and it may only have been by 6 votes, but never let anyone tell you ever again that my vote doesn't count, because it does. And we got Sarah Pochin elected in the Runcorn by-election. We have topped over 100 of the last opinion polls. Our lead is between 10 and 15% against any of the other parties. And I tell you what, given the state of chaos they're in, I think we can increase that lead further yet. Folks, it's happening. Now the next step is going to be even bigger. Scottish Parliament elections, Welsh Senate elections, and indeed a by-election that will take place in Wales next month. All 32 London boroughs will be up for election, and we will take that seriously as we get ready to have a mayoral candidate so that we can beat Sadiq Khan next time round. We're going to need up to 5,000 vetted candidates to fight those elections next year. Those elections next year are an essential building block as we head towards a general election. Now, talking of the general election, it's supposed to be in, I know you want it now, but it's not going to come now. The next general election is not due until 2029. But let me tell you, it's all right, I'll cheer you up in a moment. Angela Rayner going, not just as Housing Secretary, but also as elected Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and Deputy Prime Minister, means there will be an internal election in the Labour Party. Already, they're facing the threat of Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. That's if the two could ever agree on anything, including the choice of a party name. But I put this to you. This battle for Deputy Leader of the Labour Party will be very like the battles they had back in the early 1980s. The left of the Labour Party will rear its voice. We're used to hearing stories of splits in the Conservative Party. We're about to witness a big rift in the Labour Party too. And I think if there is one really big message from me to this conference, I don't think, and the bond markets back me up, and the leftward drift backs me up, and before long there'll be Labour MPs that reckon they've got a better chance on the Jeremy Corbyn sectarian ticket, because frankly, folks, that's what's going on in our country. We have sectarian politics emerging. I loathe it. But there'll come a point when many MPs, Labour MPs, think they've got a better chance of being re-elected under that ticket, under Corbyn, than they do under Sir Keir. I think there is every chance now of a general election happening in 2027, and we must be ready for that moment. Now, we also as a party have to raise a lot of money, and we're making progress. Our Treasurer, Charlton Edwards, and his team doing a great job. Our Honorary Treasurer, Nick Candy, has personally already put in over £500,000 of his own money. Nick, we thank you for that. But I want you two in the branches to go out and work and raise money, to volunteer to be candidates, to deliver leaflets, to knock on doors. We need to be the party of activism. And I think all of us believe, don't we, in what we're doing? So we must all play our part and do our bit. But one of the counter-arguments, well, there are two. One is it a one-man band? I went to the football shirt stand earlier, and there you've got 11 names. Jenkins, Tice, Pochin, and so on. 11 of our most senior elected representatives. And I stood in the middle and held up the shirt that said Farage, and the BBC asked me, am I a one-man band? I said, look at this lot behind me. And one of the joys of this year has been seeing so many other senior reform figures appearing on television, appearing on radio, writing articles for newspapers. We've broadened the scope, and fresh new people are coming in. People like Colin Sutton, the legendary detective, heading up our Police and Crime Commission. People like Vanessa Frake, the toughest prison governor in the country. And many more talented people will come, and I don't believe that all governments have to be MPs in the House of Commons. That's the convention, but it doesn't work, does it? You appoint people to be a rail minister, an education secretary who have no knowledge of the department they're supposed to run. And we will bring in a ministry of all the talents from all walks of life, and to hell with convention. But that brings me on to the other argument, where I will admit we have some weakness, and that is that none of our senior figures have ever been in government before. Oh, we're beginning to see already, through the county councils that we run, certain obstructions from the civil service being put in our way. And I imagine if we win the next election, we may face similar barriers to the kinds of real change that this country needs. So we need experienced people. We need people who have been in government. We need people who understand just how the system works and what the difficulties are. We need people with experience. And that is why, after a lengthy debate and consultation, that is why I'm pleased to welcome today to the stage a woman who was served in cabinet as Culture Secretary, a woman who has sold 3.5 million books, a woman who has been on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Somebody from the real world who's worked their way up, been incredibly successful, who actually crosses the boundaries from politician into celebrity. And I'm delighted that we're going to have the experience, the talent, the hard work and the loyalty of Nadine Dorries, and I'm proud to welcome her onto the stage now.
Well, that's the most dramatic entrance I've ever made into a room, ever. Thank you for that, guys. Everyone, I want to say I am more than delighted to be amongst you today. I'm actually relieved. And the reason why I'm relieved is I feel for the first time in a number of years as though I'm at a conference and amongst people who share the same principles and values as I have always held. And I can feel it in this room, the energy and the excitement and the acknowledgement that there is a job to be done. I want to thank Nigel for that introduction, and I want to thank everybody at Reform for bringing the party to this point. The reason why, and I'm going to deliver probably a slightly more serious message, the reason why is this government is in deep and serious trouble. It is falling apart. It is dividing and fracturing. The Conservative Party did that a number of years ago. But it's not just our political parties which are in trouble. It's the country too. And just as an example of this, if you look at our economy, everything that should be going down is going up. Whether it's taxes, unemployment figures, inflation, the number of illegal immigrants who are crossing the safe continent of Europe and leaving the shores of France to arrive on our shores, everything is going up. But the most important figure which is rising is the interest on our government debt. Now, what does that mean? It means that the international economic community are looking at us and they have decided that this government cannot manage the economy. It has no faith in this government to reduce public spending. And that was evidenced to us a number of weeks ago when Labour MPs refused to put through cuts to the welfare bill. And when a government shows that it can't manage its economy, and when what is happening to the Labour Party, quite obviously now, it's fracturing and dividing into two, the far left and the left. Some of us have been here before, haven't we? Some of us are still, I'm sure some members in this audience must be as old as I am, and we're here in the 70s when we've been through this before. We know where this road leads to. So we're in deep trouble, and we can't look to either of the main political parties up till now, Labour and Conservatives, to save the country. Now, I think it's an overused expression that the next general election is going to be the most important. We say at every election, it's almost like Peter and the Wolf. But for this election coming up, it really is going to be the most important ever. Because when Labour divide, as they are doing, when Corbyn takes off the left, when they unite with the pro-Gaza independents and the new left-wing firebrand leader of the Green Party, and the ragtags and bobtails who will stand as independents during the next general election, and maybe even the Liberal Democrats, we're going to go into an election with two left-wing parties. And what we might face going forward is worse than we've got today. That's why Nigel, his team, Richard and others, the Reform Party is the party of the moment. Because Reform are going to do things differently, because what we know is the way the Conservative Party have done it over the past few years. And to any Conservative Party members who are watching this today and thinking of joining Reform, the Conservative Party do not deserve your loyalty. Support Reform. Do the right thing. Frankly, any party which removes two election-winning prime ministers, replaces them with dud after dud, just does not deserve your support. Nigel has got the answers. All summer, I've been debating, what do I do? And I have watched Nigel time after time, issue after issue, whether it's been law and order, whether it's been illegal immigrants arriving on boats, risking their lives on boats to get here, you know, cross to the UK, leave the safe shores of France, get fed, get housed, check into a premier hotel, they'll never be deported. And why wouldn't they come here? They never get deported. Huge, huge cost to our public services. I've looked at Nigel and he has had the answers. His response to the immigrant crisis is just comprehensive. It's not only will it solve the problem of removing people, it will act as the most effective deterrent to others wanting to come that we've ever seen yet. And we know that's the case because it worked with Rwanda. When Rwanda was being put forward and mooted as a plan, the Conservative Party had a way. Its Conservative MPs just didn't have the will because 2/3 of them are Wets and are to the left of the Conservative Party, and they were never going to make it work. And in case you don't know, the majority of Conservative MPs will never support leaving the ECHR. So if you think the Conservative Party was divided and it might get its act together for the future, do not be convinced. It will not. Nobody knows how that party works better than I do. It will tell you a tale, it will tell you a story, but it will not walk the walk and it will not deliver. And I suppose I want to finish by saying this. Loyalty in a political party is everything, whether it's from its members or from its MPs or its councillors. The reason why Labour are falling apart, the reason why the Conservative Party fell apart, is because when they come to be tested, as we saw recently with Keir Starmer having to make a number of U-turns because his MPs won't support him, as we saw in the Conservative Party, divided parties don't win election, and when a party has disloyal MPs, and I know something about this, you know, I was the architect, the person who made the Posh Boys comment. I know what it's like to be disloyal. I've been around for 30 years, I learnt the error of my ways, but the one thing I know now is, moving forward, what is important is saving our country. And the only way we can do that is with a party which is united behind its leader, united behind the aims and objectives of that party, and solidly foursquare behind what that party wants to achieve moving forward. It is the only way to do it. So I'm going to finish now. I'm sorry, apologies if I wasn't the person to pump up the audience. I came with the more serious message,
You were wonderful.
but it's important.
She was wonderful, wasn't she?
Thank you. Okay. Shall I go now?
And to all of you watching on live stream, I know there's a massive audience out there, listen to what Nadine just had to say. Again and again at elections, they talk the talk, they never walk the walk. But we mean what we say, and we will deliver that promise I make you. Now, Nadine is right. Our country is in a very bad place. It's a mixture between anger and despair. Is it any wonder that the protests have sprung up outside the hotels? We are in economic decline. We are in societal breakdown with law and order. We are in cultural decline. It's as if our leaders have forgotten who we were. And when we want to question it, now they will do everything they can to crush free speech online. We are not going to have this. Our country is without doubt in the most dangerous place it's been in my lifetime. And we are, and I get this in the street from people point at me and say, you are the last chance we've got to get this country back on track. We are the last chance the country's got to get this country back on track. And that is why, let's make Britain great again. I've heard that phrase somewhere else before, but I agree with it. And that is why, talking of flags, that is why spontaneously across the country, there's barely a lamppost now that doesn't have the Cross of St George or the Union Jack. And we love it. What is going on out there is the British people are sticking two fingers up with every flag they place to an establishment that doesn't believe in Britain, to an establishment that thinks more of the interests of other countries and foreign courts than it thinks about its own people. And those flags say, we have had enough. And we will, and we're determined, we will make Britain safer again, beginning with zero tolerance policing. If you shoplift, you will be prosecuted. We will bring back genuine stop and search on our streets to drive out knives. We will deport foreign criminals. I'm off to have lunch in a few weeks with the Prime Minister of Albania. I might book a very big plane and take a load with me, I'm not sure yet. And we will stop what is a threat to our national security, what is a danger to girls and women on our streets. We will stop the boats, and we will detain and deport those who illegally break into our country, doing what nearly every normal country around the rest of the world does. You cannot come here illegally and stay. We will stop the boats within 2 weeks of winning government. We will. And we will stop dangerous organisations with links to terrorism operating in our country. Quite why we've been so gutless about this, both Conservative and Labour, I don't know. All across the Middle East, countries have banned and prescribed the Muslim Brotherhood as a dangerous organisation. We will do the very same. And we will make Britain more prosperous again. Our energy policy, led by Red Ed, is a complete and utter disaster. And it's all well and good for Kemi Badenoch. You've heard of her, haven't you? It's all well and good for Kemi Badenoch to say drill, baby, drill. Who was it that put 75% super taxes on North Sea exploration? Who was it that committed net zero to law in this country? They should not be believed. They should not be listened to. We will scrap ridiculous, harmful, wasteful net zero policies. We will start producing our own oil and gas. We will end the full subsidies for renewable energy, which has been going on your bills for years, yet no one told you. We will end Britain being the most expensive country in the world for industrial energy. We will bring cheap energy, and we will do our utmost to re-industrialise Britain, to start making things here that we want and we need. We will save huge sums. We will save huge sums of wasted public money, as our Doge unit has already begun to do in the county councils. We will do that, and we will, over the course of the next months, outline some serious cuts to the welfare budget in this country. It is not fair. It is not fair on people that get up with their alarm every morning, go to work and pay their taxes, for those that choose a different lifestyle to earn more money than they do. It is morally wrong, it is outrageous, and we'll be the party that backs working people. And we'll make London a centre for digital assets and cryptocurrencies, bringing thousands of jobs and taking us firmly, as well as reindustrialising, into the 21st century technologies. But you can't do that without lots of cheap energy. We're literally betraying anyone in Britain that wants to be part of the modern digital age. And we'll end this disastrous exodus. The rich are leaving. Some people think that's fine. But if the rich leave, if the biggest taxpayers leave, it means everybody else has to pay more. It doesn't make any sense. The politics of envy has never, ever worked. I don't want big taxpayers to leave. But equally, I don't want the young and the ambitious to leave, and they're leaving in droves. So we will make sure that people come back and see us as a place to be. And let's start teaching kids at school trades and services. You know, the one thing that AI will not replace is the local plumber. They're going to make a fortune in the years to come. In fact, looking at the bills, I suspect some of them are already. But most of all, we need to make Britain proud again. We've lost our sense of who we are. We refuse to acknowledge publicly the Judeo-Christian culture and heritage that we have, and that underpins everything that we are. We refuse to have our kids' minds poisoned in schools and universities with a twisted interpretation of the history of these amazing islands. We will not stand for it. We will police the streets and not the tweets, and change all of that legislation that is damaging our rights so very, very much. And we will respect our armed forces, and in particular our veterans, who are those who served in Northern Ireland and elsewhere, being hounded for things that happened 50 years ago. That will end. Now, I've laid out just some of our, and I don't apologise at all for the breadth of our ambition, because that's what this country needs. It needs hope. It needs belief. It needs to smile again. It needs to believe in who we are and that we can have a great future if we turn these things round. And I'm going, in order to get all these policies brought together under one roof, and it's a massive workload, I'm going to ask Zia Youssef from this day to be our head of policy to bring all of this together. And I will, in the next few weeks, open up a new department within the party, leaning on the experience that Nadine and others have, and others will come. Others with experience will come, don't worry about that. And we will open a department for preparing for government, so that when we win, we can hit the ground running. I promised you a year ago, I would professionalise the party. Have a look around you. Have a look at this conference. Haven't our team done just the most amazing job? I promised you I would democratise the party. I think the fact that 70,000 of you voted for our new board members was an incredible show that you believe in the party. You wanted this democratisation. And all I can do is to promise you that I will give this everything. I will give this absolutely everything that I've got. No one cares more about the state of this country than I do. I am determined to do something about it. I came out of last year out of retirement to try and lead a movement that would get our country back. I think we're on track. I think we're on our way. I'm proud to lead this party, and I'm proud of you for the amazing contribution you've made to our success over the next year. But I tell you what, folks, that was just the beginning. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank
Nigel Farage talking at the Reform conference in Birmingham. Quite astonishing scenes. So much to unpack from what he has said. So let's go straight to GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster.
I will give this everything. That's what Nigel Farage has promised people here today. He says he will make Britain great again. We've heard it before, of course, in the States, and it felt very American. A huge room here. We had fireworks, lighting effects. They have the energy. Reform has the momentum. They may only have 4 MPs, but they don't feel that that matters. Nigel Farage brought this speech forward by 3 hours because of Angela Rayner resigning, because there's going to be a reshuffle, worried about that hogging the headlines. It hasn't hurt him. In fact, it's just reinforced his argument that fundamentally things are not working. He said of Labour, this government is deep in crisis. It has a cabinet of wholly unqualified people. They are not fit to govern. He said the Conservative Party is dead. Nadine Dorries came on as she said the same. He did admit a weakness, say, you know, they have no experience of government. He wants that. That's why he feels that Nadine Dorries, who was, of course, Culture Secretary, is so valuable. But he painted a picture of a Britain that is broken. He said that, you know, this was a last chance to save Britain, that things were so bad. And he made a lot of pledges. He said that they would stop the boats within 2 weeks, of coming into office. He said they'd scrap a whole load of net zero policies. They would have a zero tolerance of shoplifting. If you shoplift, you would be prosecuted. He talked of the trades. He said, look, we need to train our young people up in the trades and skills. AI is never going to take those jobs. They really have got the wind in their sails. It is just extraordinary. The energy here, I remember being at previous Reform press conferences and conferences where they didn't have the energy. People were not that interested. That all changed, of course, when Nigel came back a year ago. And then, of course, getting 4 MPs in Parliament, then those spectacular local election results. Bad news for the other parties at the moment. They are riding high in the polls. Of course, they have the luxury of not having a record to defend at the moment. But they will be, I think, delighted with how they feel. The public at the moment seem to be listening to Nigel Farage, and I suspect that they'd give their high teeth to have somebody who can communicate and reach out to people in the very notable way that Nigel Farage can, and Kemi Badenoch and Sir Keir Starmer and other party leaders do not seem to have to that degree.
Catherine Forster, thank you very much. We will be going back to Catherine and indeed the Reform Party conference in Birmingham as and when we can. But joining us now is political commentator Andy Twelves. Andy, you've sat next to me and listened to everything Nadine Dorries and Nigel Farage. If I say, quite astonishing. The atmosphere was electric. Catherine is right to describe it as that. It was more like watching a rock concert, to be honest with you. But what did you make of what you've heard?
I think, obviously, you know, the environment is very different to your traditional Labour Party or Tory Party conferences. Often they're in a kind of more member-centric kind of delegate system where it's actually quite bright. That's actually very WWE, I thought. I think, you know, he made the claim that when they're elected, they'll stop the boats in 2 weeks. I think
I think, one of the most striking claims.
I think the only way that he's going to be able to do that is if he's elected in December, because the weather will be too bad for them to go across the channel. I think it's absolutely ridiculous for him to just be saying that. How's he going to do that? So he's just going to leave the ECHR in 2 weeks, as soon as he's elected. He's setting up a preparing for government unit that will comprise of Nadine Dorries, the author of the Online Safety Act, of which he's, you know, made a big fuss about over the last couple of weeks. You know, your Jake Berries, your Nadine Dorries, the swathes of Tory councillors that he's had join Reform and are running his councils now. That's more of the same. When does Reform UK just become Tory rejects or former Tories?
Is that what you're saying? You feel that they are the party of Tory rejects?
Well, I think Nadine Dorries, you know, she resigned in 2023. She lost her ministerial job and then just didn't turn up to Parliament for a year. She's not exactly a shining example of what I believe is ministerial excellence. You know, she actually went into meetings with, I think it was Microsoft, and said, when are you going to stop the algorithms? That's not someone who really has a grip on the real world. And I don't think, you know, I think it's great for Labour that she's in there sorting their preparing for government unit. She's just completely incompetent. I just don't know why Nigel is parading her as if she's this phenomenal thing.
I guess she is a big scalp, and she is a name that people will know. And her speech was very much about don't trust the Conservative Party. You know, they don't deserve loyalty. That was a very strong thing for her to say.
But she is the Conservative Party of which she's talking about. You know, she tweeted yesterday when she announced her defection, the Conservative Party is dead. Yeah, she was the one with the axe in her hand, swinging at it in her 5 years in government. I think it's so hypocritical for any of them to take it seriously that she's this big kind of messiah from the Tory party that's going to sort out their preparation for government. It's ridiculous.
Talking of messiahs, though, I mean, there was a very, very good reaction from the audience there in Birmingham, very good reaction online to what Nigel Farage was saying. He does seem to be saying what most people, or an awful lot of people, in this country are thinking and feeling.
Listen, he knows how to work a crowd. You know, no one will ever take that away from him. He's an excellent performer, an excellent speaker, one of the greatest orators of our political age. Absolutely, I say that as a fully paid-up Labour Party member. He's a fantastic speaker. But what he's saying is just rubbish, unfortunately. Sure,
even you have to admit that he is one of the most impressive politicians of our age.
I think he's certainly one of the most impressive speakers. I think he just doesn't have a record of delivery. Fundamentally, he was on the outside campaigning for the EU referendum for the better part of, 25 years? But then when it came to the crunch time, he actually lost the campaign, and that went to a different campaign group. You know, he messed about in the European Parliament for quite a while, didn't really achieve anything too solid. I think it's unfortunate he doesn't have a record of delivery for us to scrutinise. But I think, you know, the council wins that they had last year will give us a record, the Labour Party, the Tory Party, the opposition, to criticise him.
Well, talking of the opposition, obviously, you know, we had Angela Rayner resign this morning. This is the 5th minister in a year that Labour have lost.
Yeah.
The opposition are in complete disarray, if you're talking about the opposition to Reform Party, both Labour and the Conservative Party. I mean, sort of like you could say that Angela Rayner's resignation has lost Labour Party the next general election.
I don't think it has. I think, you know, we're obviously, 3-4 years away from the general election, so I think it's a bit early to say that. I think, obviously, Angela is a massive loss. I think losing her from government and from deputy leadership of the party is devastating.
Is she a massive loss? I mean, she's damaged the party.
I think she's definitely one of the...
Hugely by her behaviour.
I mean, she was an absolutely charismatic speaker. She was one of the best people on the broadcasting rounds. You know, the way she ran the housing department was actually broadly accepted as really good. She was pushing through a lot of planning applications that we need to get our economy growing.
She didn't understand the housing department, though, did she?
I think she did. I think
given on how she behaved.
Well, I think actually the criticism is that she didn't seek the specialist advice that she needed. That was the breach of the ministerial code.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Just quickly, Andy, finally, Nigel Farage mentioned there the next general election, 2027, which is just 2 years away. Reaction?
Oh, I think it's... I don't even think Labour know when the next general election is, and they're the ones that will set it. I think Nigel, unless he's got a special line to number 10 that I don't know about, I think he's just making it up as he goes along.
Do you think it'd be a good thing?
Well, no, I think I'm a big believer in the 4 or 5 year terms. I think, you know, you need enough time to show a track record in government.
Even the way the Labour government are going at the moment?
think, you know, it takes, what, a year, 18 months for the last government's kind of effects to cease. I think, you know, we'll start seeing some really positive stuff from the government now.
Andy Twelves, thank you very much for now. OK, joining us is GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood, who is live in Birmingham for us. Tom, quite an astonishing speech there by Nigel Farage, a real rock star deliverance there, if you were. What's the atmosphere there like?
Yeah, I haven't quite ever seen a party leader speech punctuated by another speech from another politician, but that's what we were treated to today here at the Reform Party conference. Everything a bit turned on its head, really. Everything dragged forward because of the astonishing resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, Nigel Farage did have a word or two to say about that, the crisis within the Labour Party, as he was referring to. But then, of course, the main speech was about how dead the Conservative Party is. That's why he wanted to bring out Nadine Dorries to ram home that message, and perhaps that message became a bit juxtaposed with the news of the day. Perhaps it wasn't the sort of best timing for this party. The Deputy Prime Minister resigned, what was it, 2 hours ago now. So perhaps that has actually thrown a bit of a spanner in the works of this conference. But, of course, doing what they do best, the Reform Party adapted, brought that speech forward, and I think still made it work. Was it the most barnstorming speech I've ever heard Nigel Farage make? Honestly, no. But was it still something that got the crowd going? Absolutely. And you can't fault the Reform Party for their theatrics, for the fireworks, for the fanfare, for the, yes, WWE-style entrance of the politicians. I mean, you can see why people attend this conference. The theatre of the thing is part of the substance. It really does work together. But we did get some substance in that speech too, didn't we? We got the news of a proper policy unit being created within the Reform Party, a preparing for government department to be headed up by the former party chairman Zia Youssef. Now, this will be a significant issue because we have seen parties get unstuck before by being too public about their plans. We all remember back to the 2017 Conservative Party manifesto that explained far too much about what the Conservative Party wanted to do in Parliament and unstuck Theresa May. Generally, manifestos that have been thinner have been more electorally successful. 2019 Conservative, 2024 Labour. But can the Reform Party find the right balance between policy and performance? Well, that remains to be seen. But so much more to see here at the Reform Party conference. So much more reaction to come, with, of course, the government suffering that resignation in number 10. The resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister. A crisis for the Prime Minister that is being jumped upon by Reform and indeed other parties. The Labour Party, the government, facing a really torrid time of it lately, and that creates political opportunity, because it's the old political phrase that oppositions don't tend to win elections, it's governments that tend to lose them. Will Nigel Farage and the Reform Party be able to jump upon that opportunity that has been so amply created for them by the resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister? Well, that remains to be seen, but Nigel Farage is certainly trying his best.
Thank you very much, Tom. We'll be coming back to you very soon, no doubt. Right, good afternoon, Britain. It is, 2 o'clock on Friday, the 5th of September. Quite an astonishing day. I'm Dawn Neeson, and Tom Harwood is live in Birmingham at the Reform Party conference for us. Now, Angela Rayner has resigned from the government over failure to pay enough tax on her flat. So Keir Starmer says she will remain a major figure in the party, though. Reaction is pouring in. Nigel Farage says the splits in Labour are coming, taking to the stage 3 hours early to give his verdict on the day's events.
I didn't want the Prime Minister to do anything to spoil our conference, and that's why I've come on the stage now to say they are not fit to govern. The Conservative Party are riven. In fact, Nadine Dorries said overnight the Conservative Party are dead.
Yes, much going on here at the Reform Party conference. Questions of professionalisation at the largest conference this party has ever put on. But all in the shadow, of course, of the resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister.
And in other breaking news, Buckingham Palace has announced the Duchess of Kent has died at the age of 92. In a statement, the palace said she passed away peacefully last night, surrounded by her family. We'll have the latest throughout the afternoon for you. Yes, indeed. Good afternoon, Britain, on the most astonishing day for politics. So let's waste no time and go straight to our political editor, Christopher Hope in Westminster. Christopher.
Dawn, that's right. Dawn, that's right. I can confirm that the cabinet reshuffle is now underway. One person who is not moving is Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. She will remain as a Chancellor. She works out of that office just down from me at number 11 Downing Street, but she is not moving, so she's staying where she is. But otherwise, it will be quite maybe an extensive reshuffle. We could be expecting to see some ministers appearing here, walking up number 10 towards number 10's famous door during the day. We don't know that. It's a Friday. Many MPs and ministers are in their constituencies. They shouldn't normally be here, so it may not be the usual number we see, but I can now confirm that the reshuffle is underway.
Have we seen any sign of Angela Rayner there at all?
Not here, and I wouldn't expect so. Of course, she has a grace and favour flat in Admiralty House. She'll be giving that away, won't she, now she's quit the government. That happened an hour ago. I've been going through the report by Sir Laurie Magnus, who's the advisor on ministerial standards. He's very clear that Angela Rayner was told twice that the lower stamp duty was applicable because it was her primary home in Angela Rayner's mind in Hove, having sold that stake from the house in Greater Manchester. But that advice was qualified, Laurie Magnus says. He made clear that it wasn't expert tax advice, and really it was incumbent on Angela Rayner to get the expert tax advice about dealing with a family trust. Laurie Magnus said it was highly unfortunate that she failed to pay the correct amount of stamp duty, and he said in conclusion that she hadn't passed one of the Nolan principles to act in the highest possible standard of proper conduct, and therefore, Laurie Magnus said, the ministerial code was breached. And as soon as he found that, well, Angela Rayner had to resign.
Christopher, the Rayner scandal, do you think, I mean, lots of people, the reshuffle is happening this afternoon. You're going to bring us as much information as you can when you know any more. But do you think the Rayner scandal has literally lost Keir Starmer and this Labour government the next election?
It's far too early to say that. As we revealed earlier, we heard from Nigel Farage there saying that he thinks that the government will collapse in 2027. He thinks there'll be some form of austerity budget brought about by the high borrowing cost. That will force 70 or 80 Labour MPs to cleave away to the new party being set up by Jeremy Corbyn, and that will lead, Nigel Farage says, to the collapse of the government. He thinks there's a 30 or 40% chance of that happening. The building behind me, they would completely disagree. They would point to the scale of the majority in House of Parliament, over 160. It'd be almost unprecedented for that kind of lead in the Commons to mean the government would collapse. So yes, it's a damaging thing, and the issue here is what does Angela Rayner do next? She's written in a long letter to Sir Keir Starmer. She'll be supported from the back benches, although some are already saying she'll be the queen over the water. The kind of left-wing sort of conscience has left the building behind me. That's how she was seen, a bit like John Prescott under Tony Blair. As long as John Prescott was there, the left were happy with the Labour government. Similarly, as long as Angela Rayner was there, just next to Sir Keir Starmer in cabinet on the photographs, the left felt this government was actually in their interest. Without her being there, that is a problem. The other problem that Keir Starmer's got is he has no say over who might replace Angela Rayner as deputy leader of the party. Already, people like Emily Thornberry are being suggested as those who might replace Angela Rayner. Emily Thornberry, don't forget, was the only person, I think the only minister from the shadow cabinet not given the same job in cabinet. She was kicked out rather brutally and is now the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. If she becomes a deputy leader, that is a whole new headache, frankly, for Sir Keir Starmer. This whole process of electing a deputy leader will be set out almost certainly at the Labour Party conference. It could take weeks or as long as 6 months to find one, but he won't have a say over that. Keir Starmer's team might try and manipulate it so the right person is brought in to work under Sir Keir Starmer, but that's not really his choice, and therefore there's a lot of risk attached now to the leadership of Sir Keir Starmer. Who might it be?
Fascinating times indeed, Christopher. Thank you very much. That's political editor Christopher Hope in Westminster Forest. Joining me now is GB News deputy political editor Tom Harwood, who's normally sitting beside me, but he's live in Birmingham at that Reform Party conference. Tom.
That's right, Dawn, and I'm joined by one of Reform's councillors, Layla Cunningham, councillor on Westminster City Council. Now,
Hi.
Of course, you used to be a Conservative. You defected. Why did you do that?
I defected because the Conservative Party was no longer the party I'd originally joined. You know, they're meant to be the party of low tax. We had the highest taxation since World War II. The party of law and order. I saw crime rates spiral. They cut visible policing. They shut down our magistrates' courts. They were also the party of home ownership. You know, now, thanks to them, we have 30 and 40-year-olds who'll never own a home and a state that can't provide for them. And net zero that they enshrined in law made my personal energy taxes higher. And, you know, politics is about the allocation of scarce resources in a way that's beneficial to the country. And I don't think the way they allocated money to net zero was of any benefit to our country.
Now, of course, we've heard a similar message from Nadine Dorries, who spoke on stage just some moments ago. What do you say to the challenge that the Reform Party is just the Conservative Party in a slightly lighter blue?
I wouldn't agree with that, because the Conservative Party, a very long time ago under Margaret Thatcher, was a radical reformer, right? You saw that Margaret Thatcher was willing to take risks and do what it takes, really, and what's needed. And we haven't seen that in the past few Conservatives. In fact, they've gone against Conservative values, as I said, home ownership, low tax, law and order. And so the people coming over to Reform must recognise that. And Reform is the only party and the only leader, Nigel, that has the guts and the willpower to do what it takes. Because you see, Tom, I think it makes a difference when you're not career politicians, which a lot of people in Reform are not. They've got something else to fall back on, and they're only in it because they want to do what's right for the country, not for their seat or not for their position.
Do you think there's a risk of too many former Conservative politicians, or indeed current Conservative politicians, coming across to the Reform Party when the country booted the Conservative Party out of office just over a year ago? I mean, their biggest defeat in the history of that party. Is the Reform Party being selective enough?
I'm not involved in the selection process, but I'm sure the people at the top are, and I trust them. As I said, I think people coming over are coming over because they believe in Reform's message, and they see a future Prime Minister in Nigel because of what he says. And yes, a lot of them lost their seat, but a lot of them didn't agree with leadership. And I was one of them, and I wasn't an MP, but I know a lot did not. And I imagine that they finally found a home where they can speak their truth, which they can say what they believe in, as opposed to just towing a party line they didn't.
What do you personally feel about the defection of Nadine Dorries? Of course, she was the author of the Online Safety Act. Now, this is something that the Reform Party has criticised hugely as an almost totalitarian piece of legislation that limits the freedom of people to speak. How does that sit well with the party?
So the online safety bill is something we're against. I'm not sure how Nadine, I haven't spoken to her. I don't think I've ever met her. I'm not sure how she feels about it now. As I said, I do think people can change their minds. I was married for 10 years, very in love with my husband, got divorced. And perhaps she had the same thing, you know, she was very in love with the Conservative Party and really believed in it. And she's recognised that perhaps they were wrong in bringing the online safety bill.
Interesting, because the Reform Party now needs to develop a lot more policy. Nigel Farage said it in his speech that a new policy unit is being set up under the leadership of Zia Youssef.
Yeah, great news.
When are we going to start to see, when would you like to see a more full roster of policies from a party that has sometimes been a little thin on the policy offering?
So as you've seen, any policy we bring out is really very robust, very comprehensive, and for instance the one in immigration and deportation, it's robust, and it takes into account all the pitfalls, everything that could go wrong, and there's no point in rushing a policy right now. It's almost like, Santa's elves. We've got so many people working behind the scenes forming policy, but they're so precise and they really want to give a comprehensive. Nigel said in the speech, that he doesn't just want to say something and not having fully backed up. And of course policy will come. We are a few years, well, I don't know how many years we are away from a general election, but I can assure you that work is going ahead and we'll have a full slate of very comprehensive, fully costed policies.
Now, of course, you're a London politician. You're a councillor in Westminster. I found it really interesting that Nigel Farage actually name-checked London in his speech. It's something that we haven't heard from him so much before. Reform, obviously, strongest out there in the sort of non-London country, and although there's one member of the London Assembly, and Alex Wilson, that the party has, generally we've heard this party in the last few years refer much more to its heartlands on the sort of coastal areas of the country, in what we perhaps sometimes call the Red Wall as well. He name-checked London and spoke of a sort of crypto capital of the world.
Exciting.
Is that something that speaks to you?
Yeah, of course. Anything. For me, we have to innovate. We've relied too much on foreign cheap labour. We're the least automated country in the G7. We haven't invested in skills and technology and innovation, and that's going to leave us behind. AI and cryptocurrency is the future, and as Nigel said, we're going to have the energy capability to compete, and we have some of the best universities in the world, and we should be an AI superpower and a technology superpower, but we're not. We have unicorns that are choosing to list in New York. We have one of our biggest unicorns, Revolut, who's chosen to set up headquarters in Paris because of over-regulation here. So I think Londoners would welcome that kind of innovation, that kind of jobs, of course.
Now, I read an interview that you did, I think it was earlier this week, where you suggested you might be open to being the party's candidate for Mayor of London. Have you had any further conversations with the party leadership about that sort of idea?
I haven't had any. I think it's the press speculating and people online. I mean, listen, I'm born and raised in London. I'm raising my children there, working there. I've lived there all my life, and I've seen that the stronger the Labour Party gets in London, it's effectively a Labour stronghold, all of it, the worse it gets. And I think Londoners are waking up to reform because they're sick of being ignored. It's consistently, people are crying out for more visible policing, they're not getting it. Shoplifting is almost a form of shopping for some people in London now. I speak to so many security guards, and they suffer so much of it. I was a criminal prosecutor in London, and crime is rampant. And I know that people say our one-trick pony is immigration, but immigration's having a huge effect, illegal immigration even, on crime in London. And people don't realise that it does cost the taxpayer a lot because they get legally aided, they get full probation service. And Sadiq Khan seems more focused on punishing motorists than he does on punishing criminals.
It does seem to be absolutely incontrovertible that shoplifting is on the rise. Graffiti seems to be on the rise. I've encountered that problem myself. But the Mayor's office keeps putting out data that stabbings are down. This year, the lowest year of homicides of many years, I think of the last decade. The Mayor points to violent crime being on the down. How does that fit with your narrative that sort of all crime is on the up?
I saw some data where he said something like hospital admissions are down. I don't know how that correlates, because actually knife crime has gone up 68%. Since he's been for the past decades, and I think it accounts for something like 30% of knife crime nationally, even though it only accounts for 15% of the population. Shoplifting is at its peak, knife crime's at its peak, sexual offences is at its peak. He picks very selective data, so he might pick, so I think the data you saw said from 1 month to the other month, and he picked a data of 3 months. This year was less than 3 months, the same 3 months last year, but he doesn't look at the total number. And you feel it on the street. Nobody who's lived in London or who lives in London feels safe. In fact, people are moving out. Yeah. And when you lose our city, you lose our country.
And is that a message that you're ready to take to Sadiq Khan?
Oh yeah, I've been taking it to him for a while. He's just ignored me until I accosted him on the street.
OK, well, Layla Cunningham, thanks so much for joining us live on GB News here at the Reform Party conference. Of course, here today and tomorrow for the party that is currently polling at first place in British politics.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thanks to Layla there for joining you. Lots of love in the room for Layla, by the way. Lots of people saying she would make a great London mayor. OK, I've still got Andy Twelves in the studio with me. So much to unpack, a huge day politically. What do you make? Just give me an overall summing up from someone on Labour's side about what today has meant.
Oh, I think it's a humbling day for the Labour Party, to be honest. Obviously,
even you're struggling, Andy. I mean, you're very vocal in support of Labour. You're struggling, to be fair.
I mean, fundamentally, she's breached the ministerial code, so she has to go. I think, over the last 5 years, we've become complacent with government where there have been violations of the ministerial code and they've just been left. I think it is good that she has breached it and so she's going to go. I think, it's going to be a massive kind of loss for the government and for the Labour Party leadership. A charismatic leader that really had the support of the members, the trade unions, and that kind of wider kind of ecosystem within the Labour Party. I think you'll struggle to find someone to replace her, wholeheartedly. I think there'll be a reshuffle this afternoon, so we'll see a replacement as Housing Secretary. I don't know about Deputy Prime Minister because obviously Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Leader aren't tied to the same.
No, you don't actually have to have a Deputy Prime Minister, do you? I mean, Keir Starmer doesn't have to have one.
No, Prime Ministers formally haven't. Sometimes they've had a First Secretary of State, like when Peter Mandelson came in under Gordon Brown, George Osborne, after the coalition government was First Secretary of State. It's not a mandatory position. I think, honestly, he'd probably be quite wise to save the position for when he really needs to cash it in later down the line when he's passing some more controversial legislation with some members of the backbenchers. I think you could use that as an ally play, but, there's a reshuffle this afternoon, so we'll have to wait and see.
The only thing we've heard from the reshuffle so far is that Rachel Reeves stays in her post.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can't have that level of instability, having a Deputy Prime Minister and the Chancellor go on the same day, particularly because the Investments Minister resigned earlier today. I think, for continuity, for the market's sake at least, you've got to have that continuity for a while. The budget is, 26th of November. I think it's important to keep as much of that core Treasury team in place until then, so then guilds don't keep rising and the markets kind of chill out.
Do you think this is damaging so much for the Labour Party that they will be in, possibly lose the next election?
I think it's obviously quite early to be talking about losing elections.
Well, according to Nigel Farage, 2 years' time.
The big man who's got his finger on the pulse of number 10's planning decisions, I'm sure. I think Peter Mandelson had a very controversial resignation in 1998. He was back in the cabinet a year later. I think Angela is of a similar status. I think she's of a similar status. I think this isn't
back in the cabinet.
I could see it. 5 years is a long time. She's an extremely strong performer. She understands her ministerial brief. She's got the support of both the backbenchers and the wider Labour Party. I could see her coming back.
Left on the Labour Party, hasn't she?
I think a lot of people see her as quite a central force. In the wider ecosystem as well. The unions. She's a trade union rep, trade union organiser. She came from the movement. They see her definitely as one of their own in the party.
Yeah, talk to me about the union reaction. Have you heard? You are a trade unionist. Have we had any reaction from the unions?
Obviously everyone's really quite sad that she's gone, but there's been no one that said she shouldn't have gone. Everyone has admitted that she's violated the ministerial code and she should have gone, but I think there are questions about whether she'll rerun for the deputy leadership. I know a lot of unions would support her to renew that mandate within the Labour Party. That isn't necessarily assigned with the deputy prime ministership, but I think it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, the NEC, the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, will have to meet on Monday to decide the time frame for the deputy leadership election. Yeah,
you explained how quickly that could happen.
So that could take anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months.
Right.
There's no real. It's down to the NEC. Obviously, the National Exec has representatives from the Parliamentary Labour Party, the Cabinet, the membership, the trade union movement, a real diverse group of stakeholders that will all want to kind of run it to their own schemes. Obviously, the Labour Party conference is 3 weeks away.
Yes.
That will obviously be a big thing for contenders because all the members are going to be together in Liverpool for the weekend. So even if it does take 6 months or whatever, that will be a big event for contenders.
And how much of a worry do you think that our whatever the party's called, our Corbyn and our and Sultana's party will be, and indeed Zach Walensky coming up in the Green Party now? How much should worry should Keir Starmer?
I think Zach Walensky had a massive mandate in that Green leadership election. I think his kind of eco-populism, I think Labour could learn a little bit from him. I like a lot of his stuff in terms of holding the water companies to account, holding these big companies that are taking the mick both out of the environment and also the working class people in this country. I think, Keir could take a bit from him. But I think fundamentally the Greens have never really broken that barrier. I think your party, I mean, already we're seeing, you know, factions within the faction of your party. I don't think they'll be the biggest issue. I think, honestly, reform are that kind of key issue for the Labour Party. They'll be taking that working class, traditional industrial heartlands vote away from them. I think that's where the issue does lie.
OK, and coming back to Nigel Farage, obviously the conference, and we will be going back there as soon as we can. But talking about the Farage speech today at the Reform Party conference and Nadine Dorries on stage, the latest defector from the Conservative Party to Reform. Is there any difference now, in your mind, as a Labour supporter, between the Tories and the Reform Party?
I think it's baffling. You know, they're claiming to be this insurgent party, you know, the real right, the real voice of the working class. But then, you know, their slow kind of drudge of defections is just former Tories, you know, going from councillors all the way up to the former Secretary of State. I mean, you know, Nadine Dorries, the author of the Online Safety Act, which has been a real sticking point for Zia Youssef and Nigel and the Reform Caucus over the last couple of days. You know, I just don't understand it, really. I'm sure that they've got their reasons to put her in charge, or a leading figure in the preparation for government unit. This is the woman, when she resigned as Secretary of State for DCMS, she didn't turn up to Parliament for a year. She didn't write any written contributions, no spoken contributions for an entire year as an MP. She abandoned her constituency, and she's the one that's going to be leading their preparation for government. I think that probably tells you quite a lot about their attitude.
Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andy Twelves, a union activist there. OK, now let's go back to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who is in Westminster with more breaking news for us. Christopher.
That's right. This reshuffle we've been speaking about all day with you, Dawn, is now underway officially. We are hearing reports, we're trying to get confirmation, that Lucy Powell, who is the leader of the House of Commons, along with Ian Murray, who's the Scottish Secretary, they are both leaving the government again. That's reports, and we're awaiting confirmation of that from 10 Downing Street. If so, that means there are 3 cabinet posts opening up, a much deeper and wider-ranging reshuffle than was expected. With the job we know that is safe is Rachel Reeves. She's a Chancellor in number 11 Downing Street, just behind me. She is safe, but otherwise there could be as many as 3 posts opening up in Parliament following the resignation of Angela Rayner earlier.
Christopher, Lucy and Ian going, what does that mean? What do we interpret from that?
Again, we're waiting to see the exchange of letters behind me. Nothing's happening behind me. I think why that matters is because you've got Lucy Powell, who was leader of the Commons. Now, there was a real difficulty for this government earlier this year when they couldn't get these cuts through, £5 billion worth of cuts from the benefits bill. That could be part of it. There's clearly a disconnect, it seems, between the backbench Labour Party, the Rump Party, and the building behind me, the team around Keir Starmer. A key person in arranging that and ensuring that goes well is Lucy Powell. She was the leader of the House of Commons, and we waited for confirmation that she's been moved on from that. So if that's the case, that'll be one of the reasons. Ian Murray, I'm less clear on. He has been the Scottish Secretary for quite a while now, and before that, the shadow Scottish Secretary, I think, in opposition. So as things stand, I'm not clear on that. But certainly the key thing to note from this is that there's 3 posts opening up in government, a much wider reshuffle than had been thought. Of course, Angela Rayner, she's gone, and reportedly Lucy Powell and Ian Murray. When we have that confirmed, I'll bring it straight to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Christopher Hope there. OK, joining me now is... Oh, no, actually, no, sorry, Christopher, we won't... Thank you very much for that. Christopher will bring us up to date on that. Come back to you, Andy, on that one. Oh, no, actually, no, sorry. It's one of those breaking news shows, isn't it? Joining me now is political advisor and author Stuart Thompson. Stuart, a huge day politically. What do you make of where we are at the moment?
Well, as Christopher's just been talking, it's constantly changing, isn't it? But I think fundamentally, as you've already touched on, there's no doubt that Angela Rayner was right to tender her resignation and to go. But actually, I think it reflects rather well on her, because she took that action immediately. And in fact, the ethics advisor, praised her integrity during this process. But I think more importantly for the Prime Minister himself as well. Not only does it mean that he can do that sort of reshuffle that maybe he was edging towards, but it also shows a complete and utter distinction between this government and what's been before it in the last few years, where ethics advisors would say, well, codes have been broken, but prime ministers took no action. This prime minister is completely different and has a completely different attitude to what it means to be in government, frankly.
Sure, when you say she reacted immediately, that's not accurate, really, is it? It did take a while, and as she said in her own resignation letter, it was pressure from the media that made her make this final decision. Do you think should have been this would have been better received if she'd have made that decision earlier?
Well, I think she did the right thing in then going out and getting the additional advice. Now, obviously, the ethics advisor has sort of said this should have happened, at the time. But look, frankly, I think we've all been in situations where we've received letters and, you read the terms and conditions and it says X and Y and Z, and you think, oh, that will be fine. But actually, in reflection, that additional piece of advice, particularly in this case, would have been absolutely essential. And, frankly, should she have got that? Yeah, I mean, that's what's been said. But, it's easy to make those sort of mistakes, isn't it? Especially if there's a rather large bill attached to not the tax side of things, but the advice itself as well. To get leading tax expert advice, maybe we don't always do that, unfortunately.
Stuart, I mean, yeah, obviously it is true that reading the small print is something that many of us don't do, but not all of us are the housing secretary.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. That's where the political part of this comes in, and that report, which she's reacted immediately to. But I say, the Prime Minister has set it out very clearly that this government is different from predecessors. And when they have reports like that, when the Prime Minister receives a letter such as the one he's received today, it's a different level of expectation. It's a different way that ministers will be expected to go. So that's entirely right. And I think that's very, very welcome.
Stuart, when you say this government is different, it is indeed different. I mean, this is the 5th minister in a year that has had to resign or step down because of scandal.
Yeah, but not all because of sort of huge, outcries or law breaking because of, parties at number 10 or anything along those sort of lines. Some of these have been quite low level, but because of that, cleaner approach to government and a different level of expectations, unfortunately, that brings with it, those sort of resignations or sackings. If in the future, if the Prime Minister decides that, that sort of action is taken, he's shown today that he would be prepared to do that. And that's entirely right. And again, shows the difference between this Labour government and what's happened before.
How much damage do you think this has done to Keir Starmer personally and the Labour government? Do you think they will win the next election, or do you think this will damage that?
No, I think they'll win the next election. I mean, there's no doubt that it will be a very different set of scenarios, come sort of, 4 years' time, 3.5, 4 years' time, whenever the next election happens to be. And there's no doubt that, the resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister is not going to help. I mean, there's no disguising that. But I also think that, Angela Rayner could well come back in a Peter Mandelson style, blaze of glory. And actually having her back in and around for the next election, I think can only do this government gives government well. I mean, I think what this also means that, Angela can go out there and do the things that she's really good at, which is campaigning. And, if that's something that she can do over the next couple of years before coming back into the cabinet, which I think she's perfectly capable of doing, and we'd be more than welcome back again, that can only help in the fight before the next election. It's that sort of getting the message out, which I think has probably been the weak point of this government over the last year, but is easily rectifiable before the next general election.
OK, so you haven't, briefly and finally, you don't think we've seen the last of Angela Rayner?
Oh, no, definitely. And I think she's really popular within the party, very popular within some parts of the country, not others. Others, frankly, dislike her for a lot of what I think is misogynistic and, sexist reasons. But she'll be back.
OK, Stuart, thank you very much. That's political advisor and author Stuart Thompson. Andy Twelves is in the studio with me still. You were getting a bit agitated there at some of the things that were being said. What are your thoughts?
I mean, fundamentally, I don't think anyone would defend her. Now, she's violated the ministerial code. I actually agreed with Stuart at the end there. I think we haven't seen the last of Angela. I think, even if it's not in a ministerial position, she's now officially a grandee of the party. The activists love her. So I think certainly, when there's by-elections or next year's May elections, I think we'll certainly see her out taking a leading force because she gets people going. People really like her. Do you know, I think even on Twitter, when we saw just before actually all this kicked off, her in the dinghy or down by the beach in the dry road with the glass of white wine, people just relate to that. People understand it, and I think we can't underestimate that effect that she has both on Labour Party activists and the general public.
She has moved from her constituency, though, depending on whether it's a first home or a second home or a third home. It's quite hard to keep up. She now has a very nice, very expensive £800,000 seaside flat in Hove.
Well, I think
that's a long way from her constituency.
I agree. The first thing on this that I want to say is, actually, this is kind of being ignored because obviously the massive scandal, but it's nuts. A 3-bed flat is 800 grand in Brighton. That is insane, first off. B, I think, she had a divorce. That's why she took her name off the deeds of her house in her constituency. Her, on and off partner has lived in Brighton for the better part of 20 years. Mm-hmm. From what she understood, she wasn't going to lose her job as Deputy Prime Minister, so she had that base in London. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets property again in her constituency, and I would encourage her to.
Do you think, a lot of people have mentioned misogyny and the fact that she's a working-class woman. Do you think they are factors in some of the criticism she has faced?
I think certainly. Definitely over. She's been, an MP since 2015, 2017, a while. Over the last 10 years, she's faced undue criticism because she's not this kind of polished, posh boy that went to Oxford and has been trained since his birth to, be in the media and be in politics. I think she's a real person and she has faced some scrutiny from the establishment media about that. And I think, obviously, completely fair scrutiny here. She should resign. But I think previously she has had quite a rough go of it. And I feel bad for her, honestly.
But in her resignation letter, she mentioned that the media scrutiny was one of the reasons that, she decided to take this decision. Yeah. But surely when you go into the role, the level she's gone into, she's achieved amazing things, but you expect that scrutiny, especially when you do something wrong.
Absolutely. I don't think on this it's fair game. I think some of the stuff about her son is unfair. He's 17, he's got disabilities. Gordon Brown, famously, when he was Prime Minister, never showed the faces of his kids until he resigned. Yeah. So I think on that side of it, I really do feel for and agree with her that scrutiny probably isn't appropriate because he's a kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody's kids would, no matter what you're doing.
But she also was in favour of taking PIP, personal independence payments, from families with disabled children.
Yeah, I agree. I disagreed with the welfare cuts. I came on the channel and disagreed with it. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
So there is hypocrisy.
Yeah, of course.
OK, right, OK. So, but we haven't seen the last of Angela Rayner.
I don't think so. I think, she's immensely popular and a really great performer. So, no. I think, again, Stuart, Peter Mandelson resigned in 98, was back in Cabinet by 99. I think it might take a bit longer for Angela, but I think certainly from in the media we've not seen the last of her.
Mm-hmm. OK, just very, very quickly, is she a working-class hero?
Yes, absolutely, without question.
Andy Twelves, thank you very much indeed for joining us. OK, now let's go back to our political editor, Christopher Hope, in Westminster with more breaking news. Christopher.
Yes, Dawn, as I say, we're still waiting hi, Dawn. Yeah, we're still waiting for confirmation there on the future of Lucy Powell, the leader of the Commons, and also Ian Murray. They've reportedly now been sacked. Again, we're waiting to see if that's the case, if they asked to move or they've been removed forcibly by Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, of course, under pressure here for not sacking Angela Rayner a week ago when all these claims emerged, allowing her to drag on for her to almost set her own future out and report herself to the Ethics Committee boss, and then that, of course, meant that she had broken the ministerial code. So the idea of him being a strong leader could now be brought to bear with the reported sacking of both Lucy Powell and Ian Murray. If Lucy Powell has been sacked, that almost certainly is because of that really embarrassing dropping of those benefit cuts of £5 billion in the summer. They couldn't go through. There's almost an uncontrollable nature amongst the Labour backbenchers at that point, so we'll wait and see. But that's where we are at the moment. So as things stand, it looks like there could be 3 jobs opening up in the Cabinet. That does indicate a significant reshuffle, one we were not expecting on a Friday afternoon. Many MPs, of course, are away in their constituencies. We could see several of them walking down Downing Street towards me when they're appointed, but right now the difficult bit happens, the sackings and those who have to resign. Of course, we also know from earlier, we started this morning, didn't we, about Poppy Gustafsson. She is the investment minister. She's on the way. There are 2 other jobs also going, the homelessness minister and a job in net zero. So by my estimation, that means there are at least 6 jobs going in government at the moment, not filled, and more may develop over the coming minutes and hours.
Christopher, are we expecting to have this reshuffle concluded today, or will it drag into the weekend?
I would say we are expecting to have this concluded today. The problem with reshuffles is it's very, very complicated because in many ways, Sir Keir Starmer may have to persuade people to go into jobs they don't want to do, move around, and it becomes a game of three-dimensional chess, moving one person from one job to fill in maybe Lucy Powell's job or the Scottish Secretary's job, and then how do you fill their job? It can get quite difficult. Many of these ministers have their own ideas on what they want to do. Many will feel they've been here for 14, 15 months. They're only getting started on what they want to do in government. If they're then being moved by Sir Keir Starmer and his team, that may create resentment. They may resist going. So the timing of the reshuffle matters. If it does go on for hours and hours into the evening, that will make Keir Starmer look weaker and weaker with every hour that passes. It's quite important it's done quickly and looks as though it's the Prime Minister exerting his authority over this government. It's a long time, I think, since we saw that reset back on Monday with advisors moving around. Right now it feels much more of a difficult issue for Sir Keir Starmer, almost staving off a crisis after the resignation earlier today of Angela Rayner.
Christopher Hope, thank you very much for us. We will be going back to Christopher outside Westminster as and when we have any more breaking news on that cabinet reshuffle. But Lucy Powell being sacked is the latest news we have there. OK, wow, what a day. Joining us now is my co-presenter, who's obviously not sitting by my side. Yeah, Tom Harwood is up in Birmingham at the Reform Conference for us. Tom.
Yeah, what a day it's been. We were expecting to spend today talking about how Reform is trying to present itself as a party that is preparing for government, and yet the government has thrown a spanner in that. Indeed, yes, the news that the Deputy Prime Minister has sensationally resigned has dominated this party conference. And it's what we're going to be talking about now with Reem Ibrahim from the Institute of Economic Affairs, because to some extent this is now going to drive a bit of a rift within the Labour Party. I mean, Nigel Farage has been talking about the need for a deputy leadership election. And there are going to be two different sides with perhaps two different economic visions for the party.
There absolutely is, and it's really interesting hearing what Farage said on stage over here at Reform Conference earlier, where he had actually initially scheduled his speech for later in the afternoon, but then rescheduled it earlier on, just so that they could then have ensure that they were able to sort of get ahead of the news, ensure they were able to get ahead of the shuffle. Now, according to the Labour Party constitution, they don't actually need to have a deputy leader election. What they can do is they can wait. I think they say if that particular deputy leader is taken for whatever reason permanently unavailable, I think is the word that they use, which is one way of describing this current situation Rayner is in, then they do actually say you can wait until the next party conference and the Cabinet Office can appoint the deputy leader.
Hang on, isn't the next party conference in just a few weeks?
It is. So what they could then do is say that the NEC can have a go and instead decide that they're going to leave the position vacant. So a deputy leader election is not necessarily going to happen.
Well, that is a really interesting point, because of course we have seen some electoral games, shall we say, be played with the selection of various members of Parliament. There's lots of factional infighting over the games that can be played within the Labour Party. But if they avoid that leadership election, I suppose they would then avoid a real and pertinent division that we have seen on the Labour benches, particularly with regard to the Chancellor's plans. Let's not forget the budget, which is now going to be about as late in autumn as it's possibly to be at the end of November. It's going to have some tax rises in if Rachel Reeves can't find some cuts, because Parliament, Labour backbenchers prevented her from making the cuts she wanted to make.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and this is part of the problem. So many of the backbench Labour members of Parliament see as though they think that the government is weak, they think that they can sort of, in their own right, oppose what the government are trying to do. Now, what they tried to do earlier this year is just tinker around the edges and attempt to reform eligibility for personal independence payments. That wasn't able to happen because the backbenchers of the Labour Party rebelled against the government and didn't allow that legislation to come through. The legislation that did end up passing ended up increasing welfare spending in turn. So you're absolutely right, Tom. Reeves has now moved the budget to the last possible date. We are almost certainly going to see some quite painful tax rises this year, and unfortunately, unless we have a real fundamental fundamental conversation about the size of the government, what the government does, and whether or not we can afford the current level of public spending, which is about 44% of GDP, then we will have to see perpetual tax rises. That's the real fundamental problem here. We need to have radical conversations about this.
I mean, given that, and given that what we know about how this Parliament has behaved when the Chancellor has tried to do something, I mean, it is remarkable, given the scale of the majority that was won by this Prime Minister, how many times he's been having to U-turn, whether it's on fiscal policy, like the winter fuel means testing, or indeed the benefits reassessment, or whether it's on non-fiscal policy, like the grooming gangs inquiry. I mean, the U-turns have been almost endless under this government. To that extent, does it actually matter? Does this reshuffle actually matter? Couldn't a hard-nosed backbencher, perhaps a backbencher with a grudge, perhaps one Miss Angela Rayner, could she cause more trouble, rousing up those backbenchers and actually directing the government from the backbenches rather than from within the cabinet?
You know what? That is absolutely something that could happen, and Rayner is particularly popular with the Labour Party membership, we mustn't forget. So there is that conversation. She's also extremely popular with the Parliamentary Party. There are lots of people within the Parliamentary Party that are actually saying, you know what, she made a mistake, she was ill-advised or whatever the particular situation was, and therefore that's the problem. I mean, you and I both care about housing, Tom. I think what this whole entire situation does really show is how ludicrous the housing situation is, in which the literal housing minister doesn't know how much he has to pay or is unaware
well,
of
the
the
housing
fact.
minister was told to take experts' tax advice and either
didn't.
forgot or refused or somehow did not take the expert tax advice she was told to take. I mean, at the end of the day, that is the scandal. But I suppose one element that you've raised there is the dire state of housing in this country. This government is on track to miss its housing targets by about 500,000 homes. Whoever is appointed the new housing secretary, it's a poison chalice.
It is a poison chalice, and part of the problem is that they completely abandoned their commitments to liberalise the planning system. But there are so many aspects of this where the government have promised a bold vision for the future. And I think this goes back to your earlier point, Tom, that when the government came in, they said they were going to do so much. They were going to have to ensure that they were going to grow the economy. Have you heard anybody in government use the word economic growth in the last few months? I haven't. I've not heard the word growth being used because they don't know how to get it. Rachel Reeves is completely for the birds.
There was a
when it
new
comes to
phrase,
this.
wasn't there, that was slightly smirked at, I think, last weekend. Feel the growth in your pocket, whatever that is supposed to mean. I mean, it was a very strange sort of language to come from a senior cabinet
I think
minister.
they were sort of trying to steal David Cameron's "the pound in your pocket." You know, this is the impact of inflation, and they sort of, I think, messed it up a little bit. But this is the real fundamental point here. We cannot afford the current size of the state. Taxes are extremely high, but before we start talking about tax cuts, you have to talk about public spending cuts. And the current level of government spending is just simply unsustainable. This government, I thought, was actually going to have the political capability of being able to reduce the size of the state by reducing the NHS or indeed reducing public spending overall on welfare. They simply weren't able to do it, and I don't think that this reshuffle is really going to change very much.
It's absolutely fascinating to see how this government has struggled to actually cut a single penny of government spending in just about any department, whether it's welfare or controversially pensions or anything else. However, we now have a commitment from Nigel Farage and the Reform Party to find serious savings in the welfare budget. It was a main policy plank of Nigel Farage's speech earlier today. Given how hard the Labour Party has found doing that, and to be fair, given how hard Donald Trump has found this as well in the United States, I mean, his big, beautiful bill spent more money rather than cutting more money. Is Nigel Farage going to run into the same problem as both Donald Trump and Keir Starmer?
He did sort of allude to this in his speech earlier today, I thought, where he said, you know, where we have run these councils and where we have been able to make certain decisions, we have run into the situation with civil servants. And I suppose Farage may have that same situation, but what we need is people with conviction, with genuine principles and radical ideas for reducing the size of the state.
Well, Rebi, let's hope that that perhaps some people can deliver what they actually promise. That would be a nice change in politics. I'm not yet sure. We've met many politicians who do absolutely everything they say, but I mean, a chance would be a fine thing. Back to you, Dawn.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's Tom Harwood, my co-presenter. Actually, Tom, thank you very much. We're going straight to Christopher Hope now at Westminster. I've got some more breaking news about this reshuffle. Christopher? Christopher, are you there? Yes.
That's right, Dawn. That's right. Yeah, Dawn, we're here. Sorry, it's a very busy day, I know that. I can confirm that Lucy Powell has resigned as leader of the House of Commons. I was going through her letter now. She said in a statement issued on her social media feed that she spoke to the PM earlier today, and he informed me of his intention to appoint a new leader of the Commons. So that confirms that Lucy Powell, the leader of the Commons, has been sacked. She says it was an honour to serve in the Labour government for 15 years. She's really enjoyed it. She goes through her various achievements in office. This has not been an easy time for the government, Lucy Powell says. People want to see change and improvements to their difficult lives, nor in politics more generally, not least with the rise of abuse, misrepresentation, social media echo chambers, and the call for the easy answers. As women in public life, we experience this all the more. The future of our democracy, says Lucy Powell, looks uncertain, and Parliament and representational politics has an important part to play. Living and raising my children in my home city of Manchester has always given me a different perspective of politics. My first job has always been to represent the residents of Manchester Central, that's her seat, and I look forward to using my voice and my role in Parliament to ensure the change they long for. So just there we have it from Lucy Powell, the leader of the House of Commons. It's her job to get stuff through the House of Commons. Notably failed, didn't she, with those benefit cuts earlier this year. But she's saying there the future of our democracy looks uncertain. Well, that's quite a big statement there from an outgoing cabinet minister. And don't forget, Lucy Powell was also the minister who accused another person on a BBC panel of raising the issue of the grooming gangs as a dog whistle. She, of course, apologised for that. So she has had a fair share of controversy in the past 40 months as leader of the Commons. But there we have it. Lucy Powell sacked by Sir Keir Starmer.
Christopher, what do you think she means by the future of democracy looks uncertain? Is she having a go at Keir Starmer? Is she having a go at the popularity reform? I'm not quite sure what she means by that.
I don't know. We simply have a statement there, as I've read out to you. I think that's quite a big statement to make for someone at the very top of government to say the future of democracy. Well, really, democracy? We are the oldest democracy. We're the mother of parliaments here. To say the future of democracy is uncertain is eyebrow raising. I don't know why he said that.
Thank you very much. Let's talk to Andy Twelves in the studio. So what do you make of that? I mean, Lucy Powell, she was infamously in May this year described discussion of rape gangs as a dog whistle, which was obviously condemned by the survivors of that hideous, horrible abuse. Those comments were abhorrent. I think everyone agrees with that one. So do you think she deserved to go?
I think, condemned by anyone with a brain. Do you know what I mean? Those comments, not just grooming gang survivors. I think it's disgraceful that she wasn't made to resign or sacked when she made those comments.
So she should have gone.
I think she should have gone months ago. And also the mismanagement of the welfare rebellion as leader of the House. You have a responsibility to make sure that massive rebellions like that don't happen. I think no love lost. I think on her statement actually about the future of democracy, I can't speak for her, but if I was to have written that, I would have probably been referencing Nigel Farage and Zia Yousaf's unelected ministers comment earlier today. They said that they wanted to bring in swathes of ministers into the Lords to staff the government rather than it be MPs.
Well, Labour Party have done that at least twice themselves.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Yeah. I think maybe it's a veiled reference to that, but I assume she lost her speechwriter when she got sacked. So perhaps, I think that's probably not much of a shock. I think the Ian Murray leaving government is actually quite a big thing. He's been a stalwart of Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet. He joined in 2020 when Keir Starmer was elected leader. He actually ran for deputy leader in that 2020 leadership election, was endorsed by both Blair and Brown. So who knows what could happen there. But no, he's been an absolute stalwart of Keir's cabinet. Been there since the very start. So I think it's I don't really know what it indicates.
Why do you think he's gone then?
It could be personal reasons, it could be professional reasons. He's in line with the leadership. He endorsed Anna Sarwar, the leader of Scottish Labour, but I think it can't ever be good news when a stalwart of that, a real loyalist of that kind of Blairite, Brownite movement, the new Labour government, and now he's gone. So I think that's just not good.
Are you expecting anybody? I mean, with your crystal ball out, are you expecting any other big names to go?
Well, Steve Swinford at the Times is speculating about Yvette Cooper, maybe Shabana Mahmood, brought in from the Justice Department over to run the Home Office. But I think more of my focus would be on those kind of more junior ministerial roles. You know, there's absolutely great talent in this 2024 intake. You know, you Kanishka Narayan's, Chris Curtis, the leader of the Labour Growth Group, Jake Richards, Daniel Aldridge. You know, you've got some really talented new intake ministers who are new intake members who are ready to go to those PPS roles, those junior ministerial roles. I think you could see quite a big turnover there.
OK, Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andy Twelves, a political Labour commentator and trade unionist. OK, now let's go one more time back to Birmingham for Tom Harwood, who's normally sitting by my side, left me on my own. He's in Birmingham at the Reform Party conference. Tom, wrap it up for us.
Yeah, Dawn, I've missed you. I mean, where have been our hijinks today? I mean, where have been our props?
Not a
I don't know, a
in
banana
sight.
to throw up in the air, or something that we usually get up to on a Friday. No, it's been a show, but it has been a show of absolute breaking news. And my goodness me, I don't think any of us expected, as we were preparing for this programme, that we would get not only a Deputy Prime Minister resigning, Nigel Farage's speech being brought forward, and now a government reshuffle, all in the space of one 3-hour show. I mean, it has been the most bonkers start to conference season, and I have to say we are on for a very bonkers course of a year in politics. First, of course, we've got the Reform Party conference today and tomorrow. We've also got the conferences of the Tories, of the Labour Party, of the Lib Dems still to come, and my goodness me, it's going to seem as if this sort of time in our politics is so fractured, is so broken, is so ripe for the picking for any party. Currently, Reform, of course, stealing a march in those polls. But I get the sense that the public is almost looking for anyone who isn't presiding over the mess that we've seen over the last few decades, really. The sense that maybe this country isn't what it once was, that energy is far too expensive, that migration is far too high. You're getting the sense that whenever a politician promises something, either they won't deliver it or they can't deliver it. And that leads to a dark place in politics. I hope that perhaps we're going to start seeing some light, but what we're certainly seeing is a lot of instability. And I think that really leads to the resignations that we've seen in such a short space of time. This government was only elected 14 months ago. And in that space of time, how many cabinet ministers have gone? How many senior advisors have gone? How many junior ministers have gone? Alongside the U-turns on the winter fuel allowance, the U-turns on the disability benefits, the U-turns on the rape gang inquiry. My goodness me, it has been a rocky road, but for this year's conference season, it's only just the start.
Tom Harwood, thank you very much. Missed you enormously. Thank you for watching Good Afternoon Britain. An amazing show, but don't go anywhere because Martin Daubney is up next. Not much to chat about, Martin, really. I don't know what you're going to say for the next few hours.
No, another quiet news day. Do you know what? There hasn't been a quiet news day since Rishi Sunak called the election. Things going to get wetter for the Tories. Well, now it's turning into a horror show, a nightmare on Downing Street for the Labour Party. First Angela Rayner, now Lucy Powell. Who next in this reshuffle that's turning into shuffling them off the edge of a cliff? Meanwhile, of course, the turquoise tidal wave continues to sweep into Birmingham. I'll be joined on the show live by speeches from Zia Youssef, the new head of policy we learned today for Reform UK, plus the Red Wall Rottweiler, Lee Anderson, about as subtle as a brick to the face. He'll be joining me. Plus, of course, we'll have a first sit down with Nadine Dorries, since she dramatically defected from the Conservative Party, saying the Tories are dead. It's looking like the Labour Party are heading for the same fate as all of the spotlights now fall onto Birmingham. There's never a quiet day in this business. It's going to be a supremely action-packed, adrenaline-fueled rollercoaster 3 hours coming ahead. Don't go anywhere. Put the kettle on. We'll get something a bit stronger. We'll see you soon. But first, here's your weather forecast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Odd shower for some during the rest of the day, but most places will be dry with increased